golden oldies? These vintage games are better than anything today. Command & Conquer Red Alert 2. Worms. Simple, stupid, awesome game. Ratchet & Clank. I've been playing through again recently and I can't think of any game that's just this plain fun to play. I also recently learned that doing flips in front of the hoverboard girl in Blackwater City will make her chest grow. The Sims 2. Everything about it is perfect to me. The music especially. It has a goofiness and warmth that you don't really see much these days. And the modding community is quite active too. The Sims 2 is my favorite game ever. I feel like the newer games are lacking some of the humor and whimsy of Sims 1 and 2. 007 Nightfire. My buddies and I used to play the multiplayer all night long, setting all the bots as Yakuza and laughing our butts off when they'd get stuck running into a wall. I really miss Tetris. I actually just got into Tetris 99, which you can get now. The Battle Royale system is terrifying but addictive. The Simpsons Hit and Run. I've said, that sucks and blows for years and finally realized I got it from this game like a year ago. Heroes of Might and Magic 3. Me and a friend of mine still meet and have showdowns 2 or 3 times a year. Can't get enough of this game. Highly recommend Jeebus Cross, where you can play simultaneously, and Horn of the Abyss mod. GTA Vice City. Frickin' classic. Fun fact, we're farther away in time from the date of Vice City's release than Vice City was from the date of its story. Oh. Until recently, Age of Empires 2. The only reason I stopped was because I switched to the definitive edition when it came out. Oh man, I think Age of Mythology was the best. Diablo 2. Greetings, stranger. I'm not surprised to see your kind here. San Andreas. I sometimes love to play it and drive around the city and cry for the old days. Isn't it funny how every time you start a new game, when CJ's coming back to the hood to start the main story, you, the player, are also coming back to the hood. The old alleyways and shortcuts, the old cluck and bell you threw up in, the old park where the drive-by happened. The graphics will get old, but the story never will. None of the other games ever captured open world as perfectly as San Andreas. There was something so special about driving through the desert or countryside while listening to some random radio station in the middle of the night to get to the next city. Also, all my exes live in Texas. Morrowind. The original Fable. Fable. Hero, your health is low. Do you have any potions or food? Try to get your combat multiplier even higher. Am I just looking for words to mispronounce in my best Matt Berry voice? Why yes I am, thank you for noticing. This is one of those games that I've never got into, probably due to it being console-locked when I was the right age for it. I tried playing it on Steam when it released there, but by then it was a bit dated and I lacked the rose-tinted glasses for it. Oh well, I'll just play through Half-Life 2 for the 80th time. Super Mario 64. Now I have the castle music stuck in my head just thinking about it. My friend always busts out the N64 for his birthday. We play GoldenEye, Bomberman 64, and sometimes Mario Kart. Does once a year count as regularly? Oh, and every now and then I'll dig out mine and play Pokemon Snap. I've always felt this was a massively underloved game. I bet it'd be amazing with modern graphics and game engines. Maybe they could even have a course creator mode where people could submit their own routes. Wii Sports Resort. It makes me super happy to see so many other people still play this as well once in a while. The Secret of Monkey Island. I've spoken with apes more polite than you. Oh, well, how appropriate. You fight like a cow. RuneScape. I got back into old school like 2 years ago when I heard they released it on mobile, and now I'm 3,200 hours deep and have 7 skill capes. I can't remember the last time I played a video game that wasn't OSRS. Crash Bandicoot. Yoshi's Island is fantastic. I just started playing it last year. I'd always put it off because I thought that Baby Mario's crying would be too obnoxious to deal with. Big mistake. The game is great. Minesweeper. Classic. It's a shame it's not a default game on Windows anymore. I used to play it on the school computers. I mean, if you want to play a local version, try one of the clones that's acceptable for world records. Quake, Doom, and StarCraft. Space Pinball on Windows. Just search Full Tilt Pinball on My Abandonware. Battlefront 2. The original one. We've captured another command post. Keep it up. Watch those wrist rockets. Just like the simulations. KOTOR. Knights of the Old Republic. It's on iOS now, so you can play mobile. Still the 2 best Star Wars games of all time. Little Big Planet. The game is so nostalgic. I recommend those who haven't played it definitely do so. Oh, and Rayman. That game is incredibly fun. Assassin's Creed 2. I love everything about it. It could also be Halo Reach for me. Several Pokemon games, Total Annihilation and KOTOR 2. Fallout New Vegas. It feels like I always find something new. Nintendo 64 games, GoldenEye, Pokemon Snap, Stadium, Banjo-Kazooie, DK64, I guess that means Donkey Kong, and Ocarina of Time. Well, I'm about due for another playthrough of the Mass Effect trilogy. All of the Zelda games, Final Fantasy Tactics, which is my favorite all-time game, Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2, with 1 being my preferred split-screen version with friends, and various other SNES games. Age of Empires 2, Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. Left 4 Dead. Pokemon Emerald on the Game Boy Advance and Star Fox Adventures on the GameCube. I'm a sucker for older, early 2000s Nintendo games. Star Fox Adventures was gifted to me along with a used GameCube my dad found at a market for like $50 back in 2005. It was the greatest day of my life. Mario Kart Wii. This one is my favorite. I enjoyed 8 for the new graphics and creative map designs, but the Wii is the best for me. I loved it. The soundtrack was perfect too. Maybe it's just nostalgia, maybe it really is that good. Smash Bros. Melee. Online has matchmaking. Recently got online netplay with rollback netcode. Mario Kart Double Dash, but just mainly for its 8-player LAN mode. Age of Mythology. Road Rash. Also, screw Biff. If every couple of years counts as regularly, then BioShock and BioShock 2. Just bought the collection for PlayStation 4. I played them back on PlayStation 3 all the time, but never got around to the DLCs for Minerva's Den or BAS. Looking forward to going through them again. Team Fortress 2. Dark! Come on, man! Perfect Dark. Well, Minecraft is 16 years old, so I guess that. I'd also keep playing more Gen 3 Pokemon games, but no internet connectivity makes it a moot point for me. I hope Gen 4 gets a remake soon. Mega Man X. I have yearly playthroughs of Ocarina of Time, A Link to the Past, and Chrono Trigger, and I haven't gotten bored of them after all these years. Lego Star Wars, The Complete Saga. It's a perfect game. It's still one of my favorite games for Wii, and so therapeutic to just pick up the mini-kits, even though the blue ones are a bit of a chore. Half-Life 2. It's not that old, but it's still platinum. Super Metroid on the SNES emulator, and Duke 3D. Final Fantasy 7 and 8, Hogs of War, Age of Empires 2, Heroes of Might and Magic 2 and 3. Transport Tycoon Deluxe on the PC via OpenTDD, Morrowind on the PC via OpenMW, UFO Enemy Unknown on the PC via OpenXCOM, Quake 2 on the PC, available even after the Debian repositories, and Rock'n'Roll Racing, SNES via emulator. Paper Mario and Paper Mario TTYD. Skate 3 if it counts. If not, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Heritage for the Future. Symphony of the Night. Dragon Age Origins, Gears of War 2, Final Fantasy X, Ocarina of Time, Kingdom Hearts 1. Luigi's Mansion. Neopets. Every time someone mentions Neopets, I can't help but think of my yellow Jub sitting in his unfinished house made out of jelly, silver and gold, reading his one and only book about the large Jub, abandoned forever. Oh boy, the narrator has at least one of those little critters consigned to that very same fate. I feel bad, but at the same time, if they wanted me to look after that little guy, they should have made the game aspect feel more gamey. Neopets barely qualifies for this video as it is. Morrowind. The combat is terrible and the graphics are absolute dog crap, but I love the lore, the music, the environments, and the story so much. Populous, The Beginning. It's still a brilliant game. Knights of the Old Republic 2. Super Mario Sunshine. GameCube games were just phenomenal. So that one, Monkey Ball 1 and 2, Luigi's Mansion, Godzilla Destroy All Monsters, and a couple more. I replay Epic Mickey every December. I don't know why, but it just puts me in a holiday spirit. Heroes of Might and Magic 3. Fallout 2. Halo Combat Evolved, especially the Silent Cartographer level. I'm a sucker for Final Fantasy 7 and 8. I'll be picking up 6 and 9 after I finish my current playthroughs of 7 on PC, because those seem to be highly recommended as well. SSX Tricky and Star Wars Battlefront 2, PlayStation 2 Classics. GTA 3. StarCraft. I've been playing StarCraft 2 for 10 years fairly consistently. StarCraft 1 and Brood War before that. There are so many great modes that keep things interesting. Another fan of Heroes of Might and Magic 3 here. I practically grew up with it. Caesar 3, of course. Still amazing. Marvel vs. Capcom 2. It's Marvel, baby. Chrono Trigger. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Classic World of Warcraft. Skyrim. Cool math games. Fallout New Vegas. Morrowind. A yearly playthrough is a must. I still play Modern Warfare 2, at least 10 hours per week. Believe it or not, the online lobbies are still plentiful, complete with the trash talk and the intermission fights. Dark Cloud 2. I love it, man. Great game. Fallout 1 and, wait for it, Fallout 2. I could play them blindfolded these days. Stronghold. Super Metroid. Super Mario RPG. I play it at least once a year. Maple Story. Super Mario Bros. 3. Max Payne, at least the first 2 games. Halo 3 Forever and Always. Spore. Is that old enough to count? Ratchet & Clank 3. It's still my favorite game after all these years. Galaga. Sonic 2, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, Pokemon Fire Red, Paper Mario and PM Thousand Year Door, Mario Party 2, 4, 6, Mega Man and Mega Man X, Mega Man Zero series, Panel de Pon, Mario 3, and Mario World, and probably a ton more. Mount and Blade Warband. Super Mario 3, Donkey Kong Country, Bubble Bobble. SimCity 4 Forever, with the NAM mod of course. Still the best true city builder in my opinion. Dawn of War. I miss the RTS era. Dawn of War is timeless, and the voice acting is on point. Solitaire. Spyro. The remastered versions were so good. Easily the best remake I've played. Everything about it feels exactly how I remembered the originals, and the updated graphics are incredible. It's somehow just how I remembered it looking as well. But going back to the originals is super rough on the eyes these days. 10 out of 10 perfect remakes. Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare. Harvest Moon on the GBA, the Stardew Valley prequel. Wii Sports, and I'd say I still play that regularly. Mainly tennis as well. The nostalgia is sometimes blinding, even going into the Wii. It was my first game console and game. The Oregano Trail, the Oregon Trail. It's nice to play a quick journey when you're bored and you can play it for free on archive.org, along with the 1992 Deluxe Edition. Mario Party on the N64, literally every weekend. The mini-games make excellent drinking games. Counter-Strike 1.6 and also GTA San Andreas. Victoria 2. It's a shame it's never getting a sequel. I know it's basic, but I haven't seen anyone else say it. SMB 3. Worms Armageddon. It still has a decent online community. I still boot up the old Tekken games every now and again, especially 2. My favorite game is, well, it sounds like Plastipus. It's a Russian game. I don't know if game is in English language, but it's a really good game. Has somebody heard about this game? I'm sorry because of mistakes. I just learned English and I want to have a little more practice. Red Alert 2 Yuri's Revenge. Wolfenstein 3D. Mass Effect. I start the trilogy in September and finish on November 7th, every year. Occasionally I'll go back to Call of Duty Modern Warfare just to play the campaign. And Call of Duty World at War had a certain feeling of brutality I felt was lacking in the other campaigns and is always worth a replay as well. It genuinely felt like a horrible place to be rather than some action film. Maybe it's the fact that your enemies would lose limbs. I don't remember that happening in any other Call of Duty game. There's a lot of classic games on my list, but I don't usually play through the entire game every time I boot them up. But I'll usually play all of them for at least a couple of hours, at least a few times a year. And I take old to mean nothing newer than the 2000s. So, to rattle it off in no particular order, Doom or Doom 2, Morrowind, Duke Nukem, Shadow Warrior, Postal 2, Painkiller Black, Brutal Legend, sometimes I just sit in the car and listen to the soundtrack, Hitman Blood Money, Descent 1, 2, and 3, Serious Sam First Encounter and Serious Sam Second Encounter, System Shock 1 and 2, Deus Ex, Devil May Cry 3, Thief 1 through 3, Far Cry 1 plus 2, Judge Dredd, Dread vs. Death, Neverwinter Nights 1 and 2, Diablo 2, Torchlight, Nobody Lives Forever 1 and 2. A lot of them have level select options, but I can start from any point in these games and know exactly where I need to go and what I need to do next. So picking up where I last saved isn't a problem, even if it has been several months. I will say that I double-took when you mentioned Torchlight. I was like, that game came out just before I went to college, it's not that old. And then I realized that that means it was many, many years ago, and is more of a retro game now than 90s games were when I called those retro games. Being old feels real bad, you guys. Also, your taste is very different from mine if you like Far Cry 1. That game goes whack when the aliens show up, my gosh. Super Mario Bros. Not regularly, but Digimon World 1 and Vagrant Story once every year. Harvest Moon. Saints Row 2. This is the best game, and the only game I have the patience for. The game was washed over because of the rise of Grand Theft Auto, but because of this, the game has stayed a niche underground game, much to my pleasure. I love the customization, the storyline, and how hood the game was. They played real gangster music in this one, not that fake stuff. Sometimes I imagine real life could be that way, as I love inner-city urban life. The recent editions of Saints Row have nothing to do with the original theme of 2, and this saddens me, because I'd have loved for the game to remain the same, just with better graphics and more attention to detail. Sometimes I fantasize of a development company that sees the original essence of the game and updates it to GTA 4 quality, but I've come to terms that that will never happen. Twisted Metal 2. Civilization 2. Doom 1. Frickin' classic. Unreal World. It's 32 years young, just like me. It's a roguelike set in Iron Age Finland where you get to survive. It's basically one big ode to indigenous peoples. The feeling you get when you finally get to kill a much-needed elk is amazing. It also has a fantastic way to simulate superstitious beliefs. One of my favorite moments was when I accidentally didn't blanch, boil to make safe to eat, some poisonous mushrooms, and I made mushroom soup with them. Then my character started feeling sick, and I understood my mistake. Went to the local sage to heal me, and still felt sick. Took a sauna, as my people believe that cleans the body of evil spirits, drank milkweed tea to help filter out the toxins, and repeated this for a day or two. I was about to succumb to the poison anyway. In desperation, I sacrificed some of the leftover soup to the spirits. It made my character feel at ease. I went to sleep, woke up, and was no longer poisoned. I don't know what worked or what didn't work, but I'm not gonna lie, I jumped up and down from happiness. I put hours into this character, you see. The game certainly made me feel superstitious and grateful to the spirits for healing me. The game tells you that superstitious acts might help. I don't know if this is true or not, it doesn't matter. I got fully sucked into the world, and when it put my character at ease, in a strange way, it did the same for real-life me. Totally worth checking out that game. It's free, or you can pay for it to get the better-looking and newer version, but the free one gives you a good idea of whether you'd like it or not. I do a playthrough of Star Fox 64 once every couple of months. It's a good way to relax, and it only takes an hour or so to beat. Team Fortress 2. I still play through Kingdom Hearts 2 every year. The gameplay is just fantastic. The first one was the first video game I bought on my own. I nearly beat the entire first game on an unmodified Kingdom key because I didn't know you could change it. Such good memories. Tetris. Why don't people ever say Leisure Suit Larry? Well, because I still have PTSD from getting stuck towards the end. I think I forgot to bring a barf bag on a plane or something stupid like that. The original Doom. Mafia, the City of Lost Heaven. Just finished a playthrough of my good old pal GTA San Andreas, aka, all you had to do was follow the goddamn train, CJ. Here's a few. First, the Eye of the Beholder trilogy for DOSBox. It's a first-person dungeon crawler based on Dungeons & Dragons rules. You bring a party from 3rd level to 18th level over 3 games. It's massive, and the puzzles are excellent. The Nectaris or Military Madness series on DOSBox, TurboGrafx-16, SNES, and PSX. The SNES games are called Earthlight 1 and 2. It's a turn-based strategy game that's heavy on the strategy. Earthlight is all in Japanese, but once you play Nectaris, you can easily figure the games out. There's so much depth to the strategy. It's easily one of my favorite games of all time. I'll easily still be playing it in 30 years. Magic the Gathering Chandelier on Windows. This is the collectible deck-building card game set in a role-playing game world. You start out with a small deck, and you play computer opponents for ante, betting a card from your deck against one of theirs. You travel between towns in a randomly generated world, go on quests, fight the minions of bosses as you improve your deck. The original cards from the beginning of the card game are included here, including the 25 Grand Black Lotus. A bunch of fans updated the artificial intelligence and added thousands of new cards over decades of the game. It's the experience of playing Magic the Gathering in 1995, 2000, and 2005. And finally, XCOM UFO Defense for DOSBox and PSX. This is the original turn-based tactical strategy game about Earth's defense of a hostile alien invasion with superior technology. The recent, updated version is amazingly good, but the original was just as good if not better. Every stage is randomized and no 2 games will ever be the same. The sequel, XCOM Terror from the Deep, is significantly harder even on the easiest difficulty section. Doctors. What was your dumbest, "I am very smart," patient experience? RN here. I see some crazy stuff, but one thing that stands out was the time I was admitting a guy to the hospital. I can't really remember what for, but he was about 400 pounds, diabetic, heart disease, you name it. Anyhow, I'm at the computer going over some admission questions with him and his 10 family members who are crowded in the room with him. A few minutes in, he starts complaining that he's thirsty. He needs something to drink right now. So I get on my phone and call the nurse assistant and ask her to bring some ice water. As soon as the words are out of my mouth, the whole family screams, "No! No water! He's allergic to water!" Well, this is going to be a problem. Turns out the guy has been drinking nothing but Sprite and sweet tea for years because of his water allergy. The next question the wife had was, "Where are we all supposed to sleep?" The whole family, 10 people, were planning to stay at the hospital with him. You can't make this crap up. I work in the ER. We had a very pregnant patient come in needing stitches in her hoo-ha. Turns out she was a realtor and didn't want her water to break while she was showing a house, so she put a glass cup in her pants to catch the water. Instead of using a pad or an adult diaper, she went for a glass cup. She sat down while showing a house, and sure enough, it broke and cut her up pretty bad down there. As a male who doesn't have the same anatomy as the woman in this story, I can tell you that I'm still in immense sympathetic pain right now. Oh, I have one. I got this from my friend, who's a doctor in the children's ward in a rural hospital. The parents bring in their child whose hair is infested with lice. The lice were visible to the naked eye and could be seen crawling on the child's clothing. While the medical staff examined the child in order to determine a course of action, they discovered the child was covered in white powder and smelled heavily of chemicals. They asked the parents what were the substances and the smells emanating from the child. The parents said, quite matter of fact, it was 7 powder, and the flea and tick spray they used on their dogs on the family farm. Needless to say, social workers were notified about this case. 70-year-old female tripped and fell 2 days ago. She came up with hip pain, but reports after the fall her nose was bleeding. She had landed on her nose. About a year prior, her dentist had messed up an infraorbital nerve block and caused some swelling in that region, but that was all solved. This old lady is now convinced her nosebleed after falling on her face is related to an infection from the dental issue a year ago. After multiple back and forth on the etiology of the nosebleed, she became the first patient I raised my voice and put down an authoritative, "No, you're just wrong, just stop it." Work for an optometrist, and it was the month before school started, and a woman brought in her son to have his eyes checked for the first time. Seems like a pretty reasonable thing for any parent, even if he was a little older than usual for the first eye exam. Better late than never, I guess. The mum was well-spoken and appeared fairly intelligent. Everything went as normal, the doctor examined the boy and ended up prescribing glasses. When the doctor was explaining to the mum that her son had to wear his glasses all the time, since he's nearsighted and basically can't see clearly past 5 inches in front of him, and will definitely need glasses for school. For some reason, this caused a switch to flip in the mum, and she spazzed out on the doctor, saying that her son doesn't need glasses, that the doctor is only saying that he does because he wants to sell glasses. She says that she only brought her son in because there was some form for school that needed to be filled out, and the doctors are all con artists trying to push unnecessary medications and interventions. The doctor tried to calm her down and explain that he's only trying to help them, but that she was free to get a second opinion and give her kid a copy of the kid's prescription and sent them on their way. About 4 months later, the lady is back asking for another copy of the son's prescription. Apparently, the first semester midterm results were in, and her son had failed all of them because he couldn't see the board in his classes and needs, guess what, glasses. Something similar happened with my mother when she was a kid. If I recall the story correctly, she was about 3, and she had always sat real close to the TV. My grandma kept scolding her for lying because she could see just fine. Well, Grandma got tired of hearing excuses and took my mom to the optometrist. The optometrist told her in no uncertain terms that she was nearsighted and needed glasses. My grandma was shocked at the news. Came back later to get the glasses, and on the way out, my mom just looks up at her mom and says, "Mommy, I can see you." My grandma just crumbled in tears at that. Me, is there any chance you could be pregnant? Patient? Definitely not. Are you doing the deed with anyone right now? Yes. What is your preferred method of birth control? Nothing. Shoot me now. Any variation of this, which I get all the fricking time. Me. So how are things going with your diabetes? Them. I don't have diabetes. Then why are you taking metformin, Victoza, or whatever? I used to have diabetes. Then replace diabetes with hypertension, anti-hypersensitives, etc., or when I ask them what medical diagnosis they have and they say none while taking a ton of meds, or when they misname a body part, prostrate, tendant, uterus, to name a few. Oh hey, my doctor remembers all of my visits. That's nice. He was so good when he took out my inflamed appendix. Not a doctor, but I'm a nurse who worked in the OR at a trauma center. Was doing surgery on a 19-year-old substance user who tested positive for crystal and white snow, who was grilling the anesthesiologist about every drug we were going to use in surgery because he doesn't like putting chemicals in his body. Gotta stick with that organic, fair trade, non-GMO white snow. Oh, and on a similar note from the trauma center, guy is trespassing in a junkyard and gets his arms and legs screwed up by a pit bull. Have to clean out all these wounds. Flash forward to 3 a.m. that night, I get called in to do a case. Apparently the guy left the hospital AMA to go get revenge on the dog, and the dog bit him in the face, breaking some facial bones and poking a few more holes in the process. Classic. Most of my own stories go along similar lines to patient has chest pain driving a coachload of schoolchildren, thinks it's indigestion, swigs a bottle of Gaviscon, later diagnosed with huge heart attack. My favorite ever story from a colleague, a patient comes into A&E with abdominal pain. As part of the work, he gets an abdominal x-ray, which shows the problem as clear as day. The colleague then has proceeded to remove from the patient's rectum an 8-inch replica of Nelson's column, the statue in the centre of Trafalgar Square, London. On showing it to the patient, the response was, "Oh, that's Nelson. He lives up there." I've got 2 stories that stick out in my mind. The first is the mother of a toddler who came into the ER. The kid had cruddy green and bloody stuff coming out of his left nostril and a lot of redness and swelling of only the left side of his nose and the adjacent cheek. Mum was sure he caught a sinus infection and just wanted some antibiotics. Now, I know some kids like shoving whatever will fit into their body orifices, and that this was more than likely given the one-sided nature of his condition, but Mum was insistent that he never puts things in his nose. It took some convincing, but I finally got her to let me take a look. Gave a squirt of midazolam in the good nostril to settle him, then dug in with some tweezers through the crud until I pulled out a big old button battery. Would have been burning his nose for a couple of days. Hopefully, he healed up well. Side note, if a kid swallows a button battery, it can do similar things to their esophagus. This was an emergency and needs to be dealt with ASAP. When I was a medical student, I did an overnight ambulance ride-along. It was a slow night, so I was excited when dispatch called about what sounded like a stroke or a loss of consciousness. We zip over there, and the paramedic knocks on the door of a darkened house. A man opens the door slowly and says, "Oh yeah, she's in the back room." My sense of foreboding grew as we slowly made our way through the dim house, wondering what awful sight I would see back there. Just before we get to the back room, the light flicks on and this spry elderly woman practically bounces out of the room, carrying her bag of meds, cheerily saying, "Oh, good. Hello, gentlemen. Let's go to the dining room and I'll tell you what's been happening." She explains how she's on meds for high blood pressure, but instead of taking them as prescribed, she takes more or less depending on how she's feeling or something. Before bed, she took her BP on her home automatic machine, and it was a little high, so she kept repeating it and the numbers kept going higher and higher. She thought she was going to stroke out, so called 911. Of course, they were going up because she was freaking out about the previously high numbers, causing a vicious cycle. Even though both I and the paramedic knew she was more than likely fine, neither of us were doctors, so we had to take her to the hospital for assessment. So yeah, either she didn't understand her meds and the machine properly, or she thought she was too smart to follow her doctor's instructions. Patient had a hard time getting pregnant. Finally conceived, but miscarried. Patient has a D&C so she can try again, this time with medical intervention. We monitor her blood to ensure the pregnancy hormone has gone before beginning the treatment, but she keeps coming back with high levels of hormone. Docs are worried because she might have retained placenta or pituitary disorder, and this could be super bad for future fertility. We call her in for a conversation about the hormone levels not going away. After talking together about what might be wrong, they are going home and think about further tests. She says, "I need to go. I have an appointment at the weight loss center for an HCG shot." Turns out she is on the HCG diet. HCG is the pregnancy hormone. And this was after an hour of the doc saying, "We don't know why you have these constant high levels of HCG in your blood, and we're worried." Had a young woman with recurring UTIs that began after a recent partner and with no STDs. Went through the standard questions trying to figure out what could be causing them, and eventually found out she had been lubricating with jelly. Not KY jelly. The mix-up had literally been a joke in the house afterwards. It took me some effort to keep a straight face, but eventually we resolved the problem and she stopped getting UTIs. Oh dear sweet lord. Not only did she do this, but her partner must have at the very least just decided to go ahead anyway, or even worse, also thought it was a perfectly fine substance to use. Oh, I have two good ones that come to mind. Clinical pharmacist here, by the way, with one story in the ER and one in the pharmacy. ER physician told me this one. 16-year-old boy presented to the ER with an extremely swollen, discolored eggplant. Apparently, he's been using his mum's insulin needles to draw blood out of his arm and inject it into his own member. He thought that adding blood would help increase his size. His eggplant was terribly infected and he was hospitalized for a week or so. One day in the pharmacy, a girl comes to the counter requesting a refill for her birth control. We pulled up her profile and realized we couldn't refill it because she just got a 28-day fill less than 2 weeks ago. When we asked what happened to the other one, she said she was out. Apparently both her and her boyfriend were each taking a pill each, and was adamant that was how they needed to prevent pregnancy. I'm a corpseman, not a doctor, but I once had a patient tell me there was no credible research that smoking was bad for one's health. Okay. Optician here. We had a patient who refused to let us use the tonometer, a machine for checking ocular internal pressure to diagnose glaucoma. He said that puff machine gives you glaucoma, and we weren't going to pull that on him. He told us his father got an exam and had glaucoma after using that machine. His uncle and brother also had no signs of glaucoma, and after getting the puff test, both people had been diagnosed with the disease. Glaucoma doesn't have any outward symptoms before you start going blind. The moron just told me he has a very strong familial disposition to glaucoma and refused to be tested for it. Also, puff isn't that bad, guys. Try contacts. Your eyes stop fighting back pretty quick. The puff is a lot better than the old machine. It just hits you on the eyeball with a little ball on a lever. I've also had plenty of patients that don't understand family history. I interview patients directly so we don't have any real paperwork, and too many people can't answer simple questions. Do you or any direct families also have diabetes? Yes. Yourself or your family? Alternately, if yes to family members, they start listing their spouse's family or stepchildren. That's not how genetic disposition works. After getting no answers to diabetes, hypertension, glaucoma, thyroid problem, heart problems, etc., I ask if they take any medications. Yeah, atorvastatin, thyroidazine, metformin, and low-dose aspirin. Oh, so you have everything I asked about. Check. You want some more? Way too many people don't understand presbyopia. As you age, your lens hardens and can't focus up close anymore. Of course, when this is explained, I get a lot of people who believe they're way too young for bifocals. No, 60 is not too young for bifocals. Why doesn't the doctor wear bifocals? He does. He's wearing progressives, you don't see the line. Or, after trying to get used to multifocal lenses for a few days, giving up and demanding we remake them as singular vision, and then getting mad at me when they can't read with them. I never needed bifocals before, why can't you just make me regular glasses? Regular glasses always worked just fine. Yeah, you used to be 20. Also, you came to see us because you can't read with your regular glasses. In the same vein, these same people complaining about their insurance to me because progressives are expensive. A lined bifocal is covered entirely. Progressives cost a lot more. I can't have lines in my glasses like an old person. Then you want progressives. This easily triples the bill. Why are you so expensive? I need to be able to see. Yeah, you need a bifocal, you don't need a progressive, you want a progressive. Insurance pays for what you need, not want. I actually had a guy make me talk to his insurance agent about him needing medically necessary progressives. A progressive lens is never medically necessary. Stop being cheap and listen to what I say. I'm not a salesman, I'm a medical professional. Stop acting like you know better than me. I'm going to trust that this person is actually a medical professional here to rant with his colleagues because I don't understand half the words he said. We've had a patient with cataracts tell us the optometrist was incompetent. She couldn't possibly have cataracts because she doesn't have cats. This was also the patient with 6120RE and 660LE, and binoc VAs tell us we were lying and just trying to sell him glasses. We weren't. It was a government-mandated acuities test and we aren't permitted to make sales off them. His logic, he hasn't been for a sight test in 17 years, so there's no way he needs glasses. He got back into his car and drove off. We've never sent paperwork back to the authorities so quickly. 80-plus-year-old patient who was declining with multiple diagnoses and about 3 decubitus ulcers. Daughter was adamant that her father be kept on his strict paleo diet because that would supercharge his healing. She had a stack of diet books. He simply wasn't getting enough nutrition to heal the ulcers. He didn't like the diet at all, by the way. At some point, you kind of have to stop being polite and just tell patients or family members bluntly that you don't have time for this crap and what you recommend and they can do what they want, and just document everything. It happens a lot, but she sticks out. Oh yeah, we had an elderly woman with severe malnutrition and her hippie daughter wanted us to only give her raw, unpasteurized goat's milk. We did everything we could to convince her that her mother wasn't getting enough nutrition. We even tried to allow her to bring in the raw, unpasteurized goat's milk that we would supplement with the FDA-approved formula that we wanted to give her mother through the feeding tube. We finally had to become pretty blunt with the daughter and let her know that her mother was going to die due to malnutrition due to the daughter's unique views on what was a proper diet for her mother. All the time. I'm a veterinarian and I can't tell you how many clients want to explain to me that their pet's illness can be fixed if they're fed a raw diet or a grain-free diet or fish oil supplements, whatever. Sure, come back to me when your dog's huge mammary mass ulcerates and starts leaking pus everywhere and we can reevaluate how well her raw diet is working to fix that. I'm a dental student. One patient in particular is a pathological liar. During one visit, they claimed to have gone to medical school. Next visit that they did, dental army. Last visit was that they had a PhD. The patient will say things like, "Hey doc, do you need me to move my head mesial or distal?" "No, I need you to move your head right." "Hey doc, are these cavities being caused by the anaerobic pathology microbes?" "No, they're caused by you eating snacks all day and not brushing." Not my story, rather my colleague's. A patient was admitted for anemia and a localized cancer was found. She referred to surgery so that she can get cured from her localized cancer, and she just started telling everyone that it was the doctors who caused the cancer, and that she was doing just fine before coming to the hospital. She lectured the surgeon and my colleague who pleaded her to get her surgery so that the cancer doesn't advance, and yet she refused, saying she knew better and probably didn't even have cancer. ERRN here, not a physician, but you may find this interesting. Young adult male presents with multiple abscesses on various parts of his body. States he injected his boyfriend's splooge into himself trying to get pregnant. He tells one of the APCs he should have gone with his original plan and tried it on his dog first. The psych clears him. He's admitted to the floor and gets IV antibiotics. WTF. The things that we read for you, dear listeners. I hope that at least some of you enjoyed that, because I need to go and evacuate my dinner, then cry about the state of the human race. Where to start? Here's just a few of my stories. Picture a middle-aged man, his index finger is 5 times the size of the rest of his fingers. It smells, it's leaking pus, there's necrotic tissue, basically one huge infected, cancerous finger. He was a firm believer in not taking any sort of medication, including antibiotics or chemo. Died a few weeks later, but he did manage to tell us that we were all idiots before he passed away. Patient was a young child who came in with an extremely high blood glucose level. Once she was stable, we did some teaching and kept her for a few days of observation. For some reason, every time I checked her, her levels would be extremely high, although we were appropriately treating her. Turns out her family would bring her fast food for every meal and hide it in the side table. More teaching and resources were put into place. Had a mum in hysterics because she was convinced that her mother's, friend's, stepson's, teacher's dog has MRSA, so her baby was going to die. It took everything within me to not tell her that most of the hospital staff have MRSA, but it took 3 hours for me to finally calm her down after I called infectious control, her pediatrician, gynecologist, and family doctor. Yes, I had to call all of these people. Yes, they laughed at me. Yes, she was beside me the whole time, questioning their judgment. I love my job, but at times it makes me crazy. Not a doctor, but a gastro nurse. We had a recurring patient who was just a really very strange lady. She had a stoma that absolutely stank to the high heavens because the last 20 years she has not been cleaning it properly. Every single day her stoma would come off because she was twisting the drain tube and wouldn't allow us to change it. So this lady was really rude and would shout at us too, and one night shift I couldn't take it anymore and I snapped at her. I didn't yell, but I was overly stern about the fact that if she did not let me clean it and treat her stoma, then the MRSA that she wasn't able to get rid of because she refused Hibis scrub washes would eat her alive. In hindsight, I didn't handle that very well, but she let me change the stoma. So this entire ordeal, she's yelling at me that her stoma bags are not cut to fit her stoma, that they are too small because her stoma is 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters, to which I corrected her, saying that's impossible. She was adamant that's how big her stoma was. It was 30 millimeters in diameter. When I was cleaning the stoma, she yelled at me because it was hurting, so she just wanted to pop the new one on. I explained it was hurting because of her infection, because she never cleans it. She proceeded to tell me that she knows better because she's had the stoma for nearly as long as I've been alive. I eventually tell her to shut up and let me do my job, which seemed to work, and the stoma did not come off again that shift. When she was eventually discharged, she refused every placement to the point where we almost considered a court order to evict her. One of our F1s nearly cried with relief. Have you ever found yourself in a very dangerous situation suddenly easily solved by someone else? 2 days ago, I was picking up my lunch at McDonald's. It was rush hour, so I'm just searching for a free seat, and I found one near to a huge guy, suit-dressed. He was not fat, just huge. So I'm eating and just looking absently at people in the room, thinking about my job, my life, and banging, of course. I saw the usual folks you'd expect to find at a fast food. Suits, moms and kids, guys, and the omnipresent D-bag. Hat, tank top, overdeveloped biceps, tattoos, absurd tan. You know, the Jersey Shore kind of stereotype. The D-bag was with his female trophy. Great body, but her face was ugly as a kick in the mouth. Jesus Christ, I can't find words to say how she was ugly. She reminded me of Picasso. So I continue looking around while eating, and I may have crossed my look with the D-bag and his trophy a couple of times for nanoseconds. The giant rose, and while he was picking his tray, the D-bag yelled at me, "What are you looking at?" I was like, me? The D-bag stood up and yelled at me again, "What the frick are you looking at?" Suddenly, the giant, with the tray in one hand, turns around to see what's happening and approaches the D-bag, puts one hand on his chest and slams him back into his seat, then points a finger at him and says, "Shut the frick up, idiot." The giant takes a quick look at the girl, turns back to me and says, "Yeah, man, what are you looking at here? Just a fake chest, nothing more." Another quick angry look at the D-bag, then the giant proceeds to the trash can with his tray. The D-bag grabs his mortified girl and quickly rushes to the door, and I'm still at the table with a Coke in my hand and the WTF look unchanged. Don't know exactly how that happened, don't know who the giant was, but my Big Mac was a little cold, that's all. Well, I think we can agree that every man in this story, including the author, is a terrible person and move on to the rest. I worked as a chef in a very nice restaurant in Cleveland, Ohio in the mid-1980s. I was located near a very bad neighborhood and some of our dishwashers lived in that neighborhood. I was a young, white kid from the suburbs and one of the dishwashers was a black man in his late 30s named Harold, who went by Hurl. No idea why. Anyway, Hurl and I became friends. He was a rather jovial guy and he was interested in cooking, so I taught him a few things and eventually got him promoted from dishwasher to cook. He was actually quite good and loved the new job, and me for helping him out. One day he asked me if I wanted to go out and party with him after work. Being young and adventurous, I took him up on his offer and into the neighborhood we went. For those of you familiar with Cleveland, it was the Howe Avenue neighborhood. We eventually ended up in an after-hours club, which is where all the drunk people ended up when all the bars were closed. I was wandering around a smoke-filled room with lots of very seedy-looking people, and I was quite drunk myself at the time. I ended up in a corner somewhere, surrounded by a small gang of people wondering who I was. They started closing in on me, and one of them asked if I had $1 I could give him. I felt my skin get clammy, and I realized I was about to get jacked by some drunk guys in a bad neighborhood. Suddenly, Hurl shows up, looks at the guy asking me for $1, and says, "He with me." Hurl has a look on his face I've never seen before, a lot more menacing than anyone in the gang surrounding me. The gang immediately changes their tune and suddenly I'm their friend, and one of them asks me if I'd like a beer, and offers me one he has been drinking. I respectfully decline and Hurl and I move away. Hurl looks at me, still with that menacing look, and says, "Anyone come up to you in this hood, you tell them you with Hurl. They know me, and they know I don't play. Good to know." This was in Karachi, Pakistan in the late 90s. We were at my uncle's place who was renovating his house. He had a small cement mixer set up behind the house, which was taking up some of the alley. Usually, when someone is building a house, the cops will show up and say the mixer is illegal and ask for a bribe to turn a blind eye. Problem is, on this particular day, pretty much all the cops started showing up one by one. Each one would say, "Pay us more and no one else will bother you." And a few minutes later, a new police van would show up saying the same thing. We had enough and stopped paying them. This teed off one of the cop vans and a couple of officers showed up at our door. We kids opened it and the officer asked us to come with him. He took us to the end of the valley where 5 to 6 cops were standing, AK-47s drawn. We all crapped bricks while the officer kept saying, "Why won't your parents pay? Why won't your parents pay?" Things were not looking good. Luckily, one of our neighbors saw the cops rounding up kids and walking us away. He was a big shot in a major gang. He left his house, got on his motorbike and drove over to where we were stood. Told the cop, "Let them go, if you know what's good for you." The cops left. No one bothered us again until the construction was done. Another Karachi story in the same vein. Every now and again there's a general strike in Karachi, which is enforced by local gangs. By enforced, that means they'll gun down anybody who leaves their houses. It's not always that bad, but this is the threat. During one of these strikes, my uncle's aunt, not the same uncle as the last story, fell sick and had to be taken to hospital, which was right around the corner from my uncle's place. You could walk to it. My uncle was at the hospital all day looking after her and decided to head home in the afternoon. Streets were deserted and he made haste. When he was literally 20 meters from his home, a gang of bikers saw him, chased him and cornered him. They asked why he was out during the strike and he tried explaining. They'd have none of it. They had their weapons leveled at him while he backed up against the gate to his neighbor's home. He banged at their metal gate for help, but who the hell would come out in that situation? Suddenly, a car drives by, black with tinted windows. A window rolls down and says, "Let this one go." Bikers left. Uncle sprinted for his house, got in, and started shaking uncontrollably. And that's how we found him, and he told us this story. Chef-related story. My mother and father used to own a restaurant in San Francisco. It was south of Market at a time when that was an exceptionally bad area. They hired this really nice Mexican guy, Juan, to wash dishes and do work in the kitchen. They were, however, down a chef, the previous one quit all of a sudden, and hired this new guy on short notice. So it's the first day, the restaurant starts to fill up for lunch around 11:30 or so. Normally a number of dishes would be prepped for the first few people coming in for lunch. But this guy, in spite of his frantic running around the kitchen, had nothing ready. So my mother walks into the kitchen and says, "Hey, what's the deal?" The guy tells her aggressively that he's getting the stuff ready. Wait another 40 minutes, still no one had gotten their meals. My mother walks back into the kitchen and this guy reels around with a butcher knife, walks up to her and waves it in her face, says, "Get the frick out of my kitchen." The next thing, Juan, who'd been watching this exchange, bends down to his boot, pulls out a carving knife, grabs the chef by the throat, and pushes him up against the stove. The guy drops the butcher knife and pretty much craps himself. He then runs out of the restaurant, swearing everyone to heck. My mother, after crying a few minutes, realizes that she's screwed because she has no one to cook lunches for the 70 or so people waiting. Juan says, "Do not worry," puts on an apron and cooks up all the lunches with lightning speed. And they were great lunches. I had one of them. The chef came back a few weeks later apologizing. He said it had a really bad white snow habit that he was now dealing with. Juan was employed from that day on as head chef. Good old Juan. Total bamf. I don't miss working with some chefs and the insane substance-induced problems that would arise because of those particular guys. I got cornered for a beating in a new high school surrounded by about 20 kids. This one kid who I met a day earlier casually walked along a fence rail through the crowd and swiftly kicked the lead kid in the face. End of story. Saved me from a beating like he was James Dean. Never got to thank him. A guy who was harassing me in a bar got ejected. I learned he waited outside to attack me. Another patron apparently witnessed what went on in the bar, saw the guy laying for me, and sucker punched him. When I was about 14, it was summer and we lived by the sea. My dad had a dinghy in the loft from the 70s along with paddles, and me and a guy called Peter H. took it out down the beach. Minus paddles. Bad idea. We went with Peter's brother and were carefree, messing about in the dinghy when we realized we were drifting out to sea. We got out, started paddling, and trying to swim back, and couldn't touch the bottom. We kept trying in vain and in the end realized we were screwed. This was the northeast coast of England in the North Sea. Temperature was about 4 degrees. We shouted to his brother on the beach, now about 150 meters away, to get help. Unbelievably, some guy walking on the beach stripped down to his pants and swam out. Dropped everything and swam out. He came to us, grabbed the boat that we were clinging to, and swam us back to shore. We got dry next to some fishing boats and lent him a towel before saying thanks. I genuinely believe he got us out of a lot of trouble, and I never even got to find out his name. I was working in a specialty running shoe and vitamin store, and this guy came in and walked around for a while, just kind of looking at different things. Said he didn't need help when I asked him about it. About 15 minutes later, when the store clears out, he comes up to the front counter and pulls out a fairly large knife and demands the money out of the cash register. Being 17 at the time and feeling a half panic, half anger, I started to talk loudly. "All right, I'll give you the money, don't hurt me," hoping that the cashier at the store next to mine would hear and call the police. The walls were thin and would mess with each other as such. My dad's friend is a cop in the town and every so often will randomly show up at work to mess with me. Sometimes this comes in the form of pretending to do a SWAT raid through the back door, which was directly behind the register. I don't lock the door while I'm working, so my boss usually just stopped by 2 to 3 times to walk in and check something and leave. This time, my dad's friend just strolls in yelling something about terrible service and what a bad employee I am. Sees the guy with the knife out and pulls out his service weapon. Guy drops knife, gets arrested. The one day I'm incredibly happy that my dad's friend comes in to screw with me. That must have been confusing for everyone that heard that. "Man, this service is terrible. Get to the ground! You're under arrest!" I was at Pismo Beach in California, about 13 years old at the time, boogie boarding and not really paying attention to the fact that the current had been pushing me closer and closer to the pier. I guess I figured when I start getting too close, I could just easily swim away and that would be that. When I realized that I was going to be slammed into the mussel and fishing hook encrusted pillars soon if I didn't start moving away, I began to swim the opposite direction. This is when I realized that swimming against the current is much harder than swimming with it. I started paddling furiously and began panicking because I wasn't making any progress. With each wave, I was being pushed closer to the pier. It would just be a couple more cycles before I started bouncing around underneath the pier. That's when I noticed a man standing in the water next to me. It was about waist deep. Feeling like an idiot, I slid off my board, stood up, and walked to shore. When I was in high school, I worked at the local video store. It was a small town and everyone knew one another. Anyway, these 2 thuggish black guys who were the main smack or white snow dealers for the hood would come into the store once a month and intimidate me into getting rid of their late fees because they never bought anything back on time. My boss finally caught on and told me that I couldn't do that anymore, no matter how scary they were. So they show up a week later expecting me to waive their fees. I explained to them that I could potentially get fired, but I would do it for them one last time. They actually understood and were appreciative. As they were walking out, they gave me their pager number and said that if I ever needed anything, to call them, and I assumed they meant I could call them for green herb, white snow, or whatever else they dabbled in. So I just kind of ignored it and went about my life. Flash forward a few months and I'm hooking up with this girl who had just broken up with her super redneck boyfriend. Mr. Redneck was not pleased when he found out about the situation. He showed up at the video store one night with some moron friends and informed me they would be waiting for me in the parking lot and they were going to beat the crap out of me after I closed the store for the evening. I still had several hours before close, and as time went by, several more truckloads of rednecks showed up. I was really starting to sweat. There were 15 to 20 dudes just waiting to teach me a lesson. It seemed there was no way to get out of this beating. Out of sheer desperation, I paged the scary drug dealer guys. They called me back pretty quickly. I explained what was going on and asked if they could help me out. They told me not to worry, they'd be there shortly. I didn't know what to expect. I continued my closing duties while I waited for them to show up. Once I turned the lights off to the store, the mob in the parking lot started getting riled up. They were yelling and taunting me through the windows. I had run out of things to do in the store, and the dudes I had paged still hadn't shown up. As I was setting the alarm and mentally preparing for a demoralizing butt-whooping, a procession of hoop ties pull into the parking lot and circle the trucks. I watched from the windows as the dealers and their friends pulled out guns and told the rednecks in no uncertain terms that I was not to be messed with. To this day, I have never seen people scramble so fast. There were literally tire marks in the parking lot from all of the trucks peeling out to get away. This one event led to me never being screwed with again by anyone in my hometown. It was pretty nice. I could talk all the crap I wanted with impunity since everyone was so scared of those guys. Good times. In conclusion, multiple rednecks wanted to beat the crap out of me over a girl, and scary substance dealers saved me. I wonder if he resumed waiving their late fees after that particular incident. Car wreck on my way to school a few years ago. My little Honda Civic versus a large semi-truck. I blacked out for a short period. When I realized what happened, I couldn't get my car door open. The window on my side was slightly open from the crash, and I started panicking, thinking the car is going to explode or something. Random stranger next to the car goes, "Calm down, try the other door." So I climb over the center console and get out of the car. How about a non-human stranger? I was about 8 or 9 walking home from school. About a block from my house, some random pit bull runs up to me and starts growling. Scared the crap out of me. I figure I'm at death's door when out of nowhere another dog came to my aid. I believe it was a German Shepherd. This dog ran to my side and started barking at the pit bull until it left. I don't know this dog and I don't believe I ever saw him or her again. It was a pretty surreal situation. No crap, the exact same thing happened to me. We had a German Shepherd Husky mix, greatest dog in the world, and one day I was playing outside on my big wheel or something when the neighbor's pit bull came running after me. Sebastian came out of nowhere and tackled the other dog before it could get to me. He ended up getting pretty hurt, needing stitches and whatnot, but he scared the pit bull back to the neighbors and most likely saved my life and my face. My parents say that from that point on, he never let me or my siblings out of sight when we were outside. I was riding a bus in Brooklyn. I was trying to get some new bus routes instead of the subway because they could often be faster. I was going up into a very rough part of Brooklyn, basically Eastern Bedford, Stuyvesant. I was going to where the bus crossed the subway line. I'm the only white guy on a bus full of black people, which in itself was not unusual. An old guy sitting on the bus walks over to me and says, "You need to get off the bus now. You can't go further. It's not going to end well for you." I don't know if he saw something specific or was speaking in general. He was sincere. I got off the bus and walked a few blocks to catch a transfer from there. My family and I were the only ones on a deserted beach in Florida. I was being stupid and about 11, decided to swim a little far from the beach and get caught by an undertow. I remember the desperate, futile feeling of swimming harder towards land but seeing it get further and further away. Since only now my family was there and my parents weren't good at swimming, I was a goner. Out of nowhere came a strong swimmer, told me to calm down, gave me a flotation device, and swam me back to the beach. Before I could properly thank him, he disappeared. I had recently moved to the Columbia Heights neighborhood in northwest DC a few years ago, and for those who don't know, the Columbia Heights was really bad about 10 years ago, but is in the process of gentrifying. The neighborhood is pretty culturally and racially diverse, and I could afford it. One day I was walking home from work and was about 2 blocks from my house, but slightly off the beaten path on a mostly empty street. I had my earbuds, which isn't always the safest thing to do, just because you can lose situational awareness. I also had a laptop bag with no laptop, which again isn't all that smart. Anyway, a dude is walking toward me on the sidewalk and is around my age. We make eye contact and he says something unintelligible to me and I say something like, "Sorry," assuming I was either in his way or he was begging. I notice he has bloodshot eyes and if I had to guess, this was probably a smackhead. I angle my body towards him as we pass each other and the next thing I know he is grabbing for my earbuds. He pulls them out of my ears but doesn't quite get them as I jump back. I'm sort of in shock, but I've been in fights before, but not when I had no build-up to the moment. I think I yelled something like WTF, and as he was coming at me again, I was thinking I probably could take the guy, but I should try to avoid blood, hitting his teeth with my fists. I don't know why my first thought here was risk of hepatitis, rather than maybe that I should just run my butt away, which would have been much smarter. But as he comes at me again, some unseen man is in front of me and pushes the dude away. Smackhead then stands his ground, and damn if the man doesn't just push him again and then starts yelling at him to get the frick out of the neighborhood and berating him over and over. Smackhead turns toward Main Street and begins to move quickly away. The man is yelling, loudly, at him the whole time, echoing off the nearby houses. I'm kind of just staring at this point as the adrenaline is coursing through me. At that moment, suddenly a little girl, maybe 3 to 4 years old, on a tricycle rides past me in the same direction as the man, and the smackhead, opposite direction that I was heading. She is just following her daddy, the man who saved me, like it's the most normal thing in the world. Most surreal thing that I've ever experienced. I just sort of watch as the three of them head back to the main street. I never got a chance to say thanks. I was the stranger once, in Toronto at the Yonge and Egg subway stop, mother and her 2 kids standing fairly back from the edge. Trains coming in pretty fast when one of the kids bolts straight for the tracks, like an idiot. My back's turned, but I hear the mum scream. I turn around and see the kid out of the corner of my eye. On instinct, I grab him and happen to just get him right in the front of the shirt and hoist him about 5 feet off the ground in half a second, just as the train flies by with the horn blaring. It was pure luck, but I played it cool and handed him over to his mother, trying to sound suave. "Is this yours?" Raised eyebrow. Funny thing that she didn't even seem that grateful. Maybe the kid has prophesied to end the world or something, in which case I'd like to apologize to you all in advance. I didn't know. There's lots of mysterious strangers in the last few posts. One wonders if any of them are the same superhero. I was drinking with a friend and his younger brother. My friend had recently finished his enlistment from the Marines, and we were out celebrating. His younger brother ended up having words with a gangster white rapper wannabe. It escalates into, "Let's take this outside." We go out into the parking lot, more words and chest puffing. Mini Eminem pulls out a gun and points it at my friend's younger brother. I'm like, crap, and my butthole tightens up. However, my friend walks up to the guy, slaps him in the face, and says, "Put the piece away, you dumb idiot, and go home." Guy puts the gun up and leaves. I was doing a show at this wretched comedy club in Brockton, Massachusetts. There was a drunk chick who would not stop talking, so after a few polite back and forths, I say something along the lines of, "Will someone stick an eggplant in her mouth and shut her up?" Note, this is an old, crappy thing to say, but it usually works, and like I said, it was Brockton. That does the trick, and she's quiet for the rest of the show. I finish my set and come off stage. I'm walking out to the front room of the club, and suddenly I'm aware of an enormous shape coming toward me. It was the hosebag's boyfriend, and he's got like 8 inches and 100 pounds on me, and he's teed off. He shoves me into the front room and is doing a whole pre-fight, "Why you talking about my girl that way?" chest bump kind of thing when suddenly 3 dudes just kind of sweep into the room. They're all built like fire plugs and wearing matching skin-tight Adidas workout shirts like some kind of working-class superhero team. One of them closes the doors to the showroom and blocks them. Another goes and stands by the front door like he's standing guard or something, while the third gets between me and the big dude who says, "What the frick, man? You wanna fight?" And the guy says in the calmest, coldest voice, "Yeah, I do. Let's fight." Something in the way he says it totally takes the steam out of the big dude. He just backs right down like, "Nah, man, it's cool. We're all cool here." And then my mean little savior goes, "This guy was hilarious. Your girlfriend's a C-word, and you owe him an apology and a beer." And the big guy nods and goes and gets me a beer, before going back into the show with his tail between his legs. Turns out these guys were off-duty Brockton vice cops. Totally saved my stupid moron self. What's the worst case of psycho overprotective parenting that you've ever seen? When I was doing freshman orientation years ago at college, the tour guide told a story when we got to the dorms. The head RA for a freshman dorm got a knock on her office door about 2-ish months into the first semester, right before midterms. A girl walked in and asked what was the longest amount of time guests were allowed to stay in the room. The RA told her, can't remember the amount of days, and the girl says that her roommate's mother has been living in the room since the move-in weekend. Holy frick, no. I went to a high school with a guy whose parents had a camera installed in his room that fed into a TV screen in their bedroom. When he told me, I assumed it was one of those things they used when he was a baby, then disabled when he was older. Nope, according to him, they still kept it on 24/7, even though he was like 17 years old. I've never been so creeped out. Holy crap! I'd stare at the camera and pleasure myself furiously to assert dominance. Reddit has ruined me. My aunt won't let her kids open their own soda cans because she thinks they'll cut their fingers off, which was fine when they were young, but they're 15 and 18 now. When I attended private school, K-8, we weren't allowed to have soda cans. The reason was the principal had a student at her previous school get hit in the mouth with a kickball while drinking and sliced their lips. One freak, isolated accident, and no one's allowed soda cans. WTF. Sodas were allowed up until that witch came to school. It was a Catholic school, and that principal was your stereotypical nun who ran around the school with a bullhorn, yelling at students all day. A girl I know didn't get the talk from her parents until she was 18 or 19. Her mum had decided that if she didn't know what that was, she would keep her virginity forever or something like that. Now, Sally, this is what people do when they really love each other. Oh, Billy and I do that all the time. Girl at school wasn't allowed any sugar, no sweets, not even fruit. It was weird. I invited her to a party at mine, and her parents came round before the party to check our house was safe. They asked if our gate locked to keep people out. It wasn't fair on her, though. Every birthday or party, she'd eat tons of junk food and feel ill, and she used to crawl around the classroom pretending she was a cat. I think they broke her. Oof. I hope you recovered someday, young cat lady. I wonder if she was diabetic or something, or if the parents were just straight-up Fruit Loops. My wife's mother. Too many acts of lunacy to mention, but the one that sticks out was when we went to their house for the family barbecue. We were in our mid-20s. Mum decides to start a fight over my presence, as I wasn't family, and thus should not be attending. Wife says, if he's not welcome, we're leaving. Mum says, no you're not, you're grounded. Wife just gives her this tilt-your-head sideways look and says, we're going back to our house. I know someone who has just moved into her college dorm a couple of weeks ago. This girl has never had a house key as her mum wouldn't allow it. If she wanted in the house, mum better be there. Her parents also have all of her social media passwords, and her mum openly states she used to go and read the chat conversations. Not as bad as others, however the girl has already been home one weekend and is set to come back in a few weeks. We're all wondering how she'll rebel once she's under the college experience. This girl's brother, who's in middle school, maybe just starting high school, is worse. He is so coddled that he freaked out when he was left in a waiting room at a doctor's office alone, while his uncle went back for his appointment. The kid could not be left alone. For the record, neither kid is special needs. Around the middle of my first semester of college, I lost my phone. I noticed it was missing around when I got back to my dorm. Thinking that I left it in one of my classrooms, I called for it from a friend's phone. A classmate who lives off campus had found it. He took it home because he knew it was mine and was going to give it back next Monday during class, and that was that. I would get my phone on Monday, so problem solved. Boy, was I wrong. Because he turned off the phone after that call, my mother couldn't get a hold of me. My mum, being my mum, assumed I was dead in a smack house after doing too many substances. The lunatic took a plane and flew from Panama to DC just so she could check I was doing okay. Halfway across the continent just so she could ask one question. Keep in mind my best friend and 4 other high school friends were attending the same college as me and lived in the same dorm building as me, and she had all their phone numbers. Also, to make matters worse, this was not the last time she took an 8-hour flight just to make sure I was okay. My first roommate in college was extremely coddled by his mother, or at least I thought so. His home was about an hour away from campus, and she came up every day to get his laundry and make his bed, clean his side of the room. They were both neat freaks, and I wasn't a slob by any means, but I wasn't quite as neat as either of them would have liked. What ended up happening is I would come back from my class and find her making my bed, organizing my desk, and picking up my dirty clothes. Didn't really appreciate that, but I didn't want to make waves, so I just kept my mouth closed. Finally, it got really weird when I came back after a class had gotten cancelled and they were both in the same twin bed. He was sleeping and she was stroking his hair and face and singing him a lullaby. Wife grew up in a quiverful family. She was only allowed to wear ankle-length skirts, no movies at any time, only parental-approved books. Pilgrim's Progress, the Bible, theology books, no music except for classical and hymns. In order to date her, I had to court her. That involved never being alone, her parents inviting themselves to our anniversary dinners, siblings repeating every word that we said back to her parents, I gave her a goodbye hug and her mother yelled at her, calling her a whore and a loose woman. Finally, she gave up and ran away. They chased her to her car screaming and tried to block her in the driveway with a tractor. My first boyfriend in high school practically lived at our house because my mother refused to let me go to his. He was over every day after school and most weekends. Finally, I convinced her to let me drive myself to his house. At this point, I had met his dad twice, and his dad thought he did something to offend or scare me off because I never came to visit them. I really wanted to go out and hang out with him and his dad, so I drove myself to his house with the condition that I call my mother immediately upon arrival from their phone. Google Maps said it should take 8 minutes to get there. 8 minutes and 45 seconds later, I get an enraged phone call from my mum. I was just walking in the door and I hadn't called her yet. She made me immediately return home and grounded me from my cell phone for a month. The parents from these stories are the kind of people who go on murderous rampages when their children inevitably rebel, aren't they? I had an ex-boyfriend from high school whose parents were very strict about him dating, so we always had group dates, we weren't allowed to be alone, we went over to his house for a movie night and everyone all of a sudden left. But it was super late and my dad's place was across town, so I called for him to pick me up, but it was going to take 45 minutes to get there. His parents made me wait outside on the porch alone in November in Canada. It was cold. He wasn't allowed to wait outside with me. They didn't even let me wait in the foyer with them supervising. Well, girls who've frozen to death can't get pregnant, I guess. My mother signed me out of high school, and I was not allowed to go out of the house for almost 2 years. She quit her job and was convinced the Asian mafia was going to kill us. I wasn't allowed near windows, to get the mail, nothing. But my siblings came and went as they pleased. To this day, I do not understand. You are obviously the favorite. Congrats! I got one. My sister once told me about this one time when she was at a beach house with her friends. They were all over 20 years old and they were planning to stay there the weekend. Obviously, they were going to stay up all night watching movies when midnight strikes. This one girl's phone starts to ring and it was her mother telling her to go to sleep. Worst part? She silently stood up and went to bed. She's over 20 years old. I had a 9 p.m. bedtime at 17. I had to get up at 8 a.m. the next day, so for 11 hours a day I was supposed to be in bed asleep. It drove me nuts. Getting up early was also a big no-no because I woke her up. I wasn't allowed to leave my room for anything either. It was hell. It took months of her screaming at me and me talking as calmly as I could while she hit, screamed, trashed my room and my schoolwork before she would let me stay up as long as I wanted. The school ended up getting involved because I went from an A student to a D in a matter of months because I just couldn't get all of my work done. I worked on the weekends and was training 4 nights a week as well. Made getting all my work done difficult when after school I was supposed to clean the house, eat dinner, then go straight to training. I work security at a college, so I've seen my fair share. This wasn't so much overprotective as it was babying. I once had a mother call our office. The exchange went as following. Mother: Hello? Can you please tell my son's professor that he won't be in class today? He doesn't feel well. Me: Where is your son? Oh, he's there, on campus in the dorms. Ma'am, I don't know who your son's professor is, and even if I did, it's his responsibility to get in touch with them, not mine or yours. Oh, I know, but he called me and asked me to call him out of class. He's in college now. He's 18, he can do this on his own. He doesn't even need to call, he emails his professor. Ha! Oh, you're so right. I had a friend growing up whose mum refused to send a Christmas card with her and her brother's photos on it. The mum was convinced at the end of the season, once people threw away the cards, the garbage man or anyone rifling through the trash would see her amazing, beautiful children, find the address on the discarded envelope, and come kidnap the kids from their home. She did many other bizarre things, but that one always stuck out to me. I frickin' hate when parents do this. It's extremely overprotective and kids need to be exposed to the world. Besides, I tend to return the kids when I'm done with them. Sincerely, the garbage man. In all seriousness, the level of paranoia to imagine that people are digging through your trash specifically to get the rare thrown-out photos of children who sent the card from a different house is an extreme level of delusion. On my friend's 13th birthday, his big brother was taking us paintballing. We said goodbye to his mum. She was, in full disclosure, a severe paranoid schizophrenic who liked to go off her meds. Anywho, we left the house and headed to paintball. At a random gas station a good half hour away, we stopped for snacks. When the older brother goes inside, the mum pulls up to a screeching halt next to us, rolls down the windows and starts yelling at us to make sure the older brother spends all the money on paintball, rocking the crazy eyes the whole time. She leaves by rolling around to the back of the gas station and idling there. When the older brother got back, we told him what was going on. He told us to buckle up. Sure enough, we pulled out of the gas station and she starts to try tailing us. I say try because next thing I know we're on the freeway doing at least 100, dodging from lane to lane till we found a quick off-ramp that took us under a bridge where we hid for a few minutes to make sure we'd lost her. The older brother refused to let her ruin my friend's 13th birthday. He was a good dude. There's two major things that we older brothers have to do. 1. Annoy your siblings. 2. Make sure no one else F's with your siblings. My ex's mum screamed in my face, legit inches away from my face, that I was stealing her son away when he bought his house. It was his decision to buy a house and he had wanted me to live with him. The location of the house, you ask? Directly across the street from where his parents live. Was his name Raymond, and did everybody love him? My former roommate's parents were extremely protective of them. Once I woke up to 3 calls and 4 texts from her mum asking if my roommate was in the room. I replied back, yes. Later that day, my roommate explained to me that there was a girl murdered in North Carolina that fit her description and her parents wanted to make sure she was alive. We go to school over 400 miles away from North Carolina. I don't know about the worst since my parents were pretty good about other stuff, but anything to do with adult fun times was a major no-go. I remember them trying to give the talk to my oldest sister, who was about 8 or 9 at the time, making me 4 or 5. We got to the part where the guy puts the thing he pees out of into a hole that I was not aware existed, and I ran away screaming. That subject was never revisited. They pulled me out of middle school adult education because it was too early and my high school taught abstinence. I thought that all adult flicks, not just those ones starring children, were illegal until college. My friend's mum. They're great people and I love them like a second family, but she was overprotective. 4th grade, his mum cut the tail off the Nightcrawler action figure I got him for his birthday for being demonic. 5th grade, she throws away the medieval Spawn action figure I got him for being Spawn. High school, she throws away the vintage Faster Pussycat shirt I gave him. His dad's cool though. He'd watch Beavis and Butthead with us when we were 10. I once dated a girl with absolutely insane parents. Throughout middle school and high school, they refused to let her go out to anything but school and choir trips. She had to argue and bargain with them for months just to be able to go to senior prom. They wouldn't let her go to junior prom. They also refused to let her get a driver's license or a car to limit her mobility. Even to this day, they refuse to let her go out. She, a 20-year-old woman, has to get permission from her super restrictive mum and dad to go out for coffee at the cafe downstairs. The worst part of it all is that she can't move out as they have hold of her passport and where she lives. It's more or less impossible to get anything done without it. On the legality of withholding her passport, I don't know for sure whether it is or not. The laws where I lived sometimes had really backwards policies. I've advised her to try to take action or escape many times, but for personal reasons, she's decided not to. I disagree entirely with her choice, but it's her choice to make, not mine. I graduated high school a year and a few months ago. A good friend of mine was a freshman in my senior year. Now she's a junior and taking college classes at my college. She's not allowed to talk to me because I graduated. She still does in person, but not as much as we used to be able to. There are a lot more stories of these sorts of relationships continuing into adulthood than I would have expected. How about you? When I was in college, I was dating a girl and had been for some time. My dad lived in another state and we had made plans to go visit him, so she could meet him for the first time. The day we were supposed to leave, like 2 hours before we left town, she got her grades from her college. They weren't as good as her parents wanted, so they grounded her. I went to her house to try and reason with her mum. I should have bailed at that red flag, but I was in love, and her mum was so condescending. I explained how my dad and stepmum had made arrangements for her to be there, and how excited they were to meet her. She wouldn't hear it. I made the mistake of saying, I understand that you're upset, but deciding this right before the trip just seems childish. I was banned from their house. We were actually together for a really long time after that, but I know they're still really overprotective and she's really dependent on them. She's 31 and the last time I talked to her, a few months back, she still lived with them. My boss has a baby and a 4-year-old, and they are super overprotective. Like, the 4-year-old still sleeps in their bed with them and the baby, and they haven't left either kid alone with another person ever. Sometimes he talks about how they've never been out since the kids. Like, I can relate. I have a pair myself, but we still live our lives. The 4-year-old went to preschool, so the mum went with him and sat in the class every day, and even sat at his table and played with him instead of letting him interact with his peers. One time they were in the office and my boss hand-fed him food because he didn't want the kid handling the food himself since the kid had recently touched their computer. Recently, he was describing their garden and how the food at the back never gets picked because we can't go back there ever because of the baby, you know? No, I have no idea. You lived on a small fenced lot in the suburbs. What are you afraid of getting to your baby if you walk out to the corner of your yard? The worst part is he's constantly telling me how tired he is and how his kids never sleep. But it's probably because they're all sleeping in the same bed, waking each other up all the time. Both my kids were in their own room by a couple of months old, and it made life so much easier. When they're in the room with you, you notice every little noise. I was TAing a general chemistry lab in college, and a parent emailed me after the first lab report with an annotated copy of the graded assignment I gave, which was a B+. Little Johnny had never gotten a B in class before, and I was being unfair since it was his first semester in college. Long story short, she threatened to go to the professor. I said go ahead, and they did. The professor was awesome. When kids whine and moan about their grades, he offers them a regrade, and then goes over the report with a fine-toothed comb. The B+ got changed to a C. The student was the one who ultimately asked for the regrade. Would he have asked for one if his parents didn't make a stink? Maybe, maybe not. It doesn't matter. Part of being in college is learning to take responsibility for your actions. And there's a reason professors rely on TAs for grading freshman lab assignments. Their time and attention is better spent elsewhere. Asking the professor for a personal regrade must carry downside risk. Otherwise, everyone would ask for one every time. Please feel free to question the grader on anything. That's part of their job too. Just make sure you have a solid case before requesting a formal regrade. A friend of mine had a very overprotective and religious set of parents. He didn't have a door on his bedroom or bathroom. When you went over there, you had to take your shoes and socks off. I understand shoes, but how are socks any more dirty than bare feet? He never got dropped anywhere either. Always had to be mum or dad there. I think the scariest part of that to me and some of the other commenters was the lack of a door on a bathroom. Seriously, WTF? Yes, I've been waiting for this. So I met my wife on OkCupid. We were about 21 at the time. I came into her life at a very bad moment. She was failing classes, anxiety-prone, etc. Eventually, she got asked to take a leave of absence from her school. Against my better advice, she didn't tell her parents. Went back to the school to pack up her stuff and figure out what her next move was. Well, her parents found out within that next day or so, and her dad flew some odd 1,000 miles to get her and go back home. But this was the next thing. They cut her off from the world. She couldn't go outside the house unless it was to the schools that they enrolled her in to get her back in good standing. She dropped off the face of the earth. Her mum spent time writing all of her friends, pretending to be her, stating that they could not be friends and that she was just moving on with her life. Her mum did the same to me. Eventually I got a hold of her and we had to talk secret for months on end. We started dating and she graduated and we kept talking. Well, she finally moves out of her parents' house and comes to visit me some 1,000 miles away. Her parents cut her cell phone off. When she gets back to her hometown, they demand she comes over. They confiscate some items of hers that I gave her and told her to never speak to me again. That doesn't work, of course. Eventually we say screw it because they're bat crap crazy. We're talking the mother mailing me that she knew who many managers were and she could call them and let them have some fricking craziness. And then we got married. When we finally tell them, which is like a month or two after it happens, the mum played the victim like we didn't even get her the chance to get to know me and to like me. And I'm just like, B-word? You impersonated your daughter and told me that you wanted nothing to do with me. Your daughter told you that we would be together, and you threatened to disown her. As you could see, this completely works me up. Nonetheless, now the mother refuses to speak with either of us, has manipulated the ballless father into not speaking with his own child, and the teenaged younger sister thinks that my wife is the world's most awful person for choosing to live her life. For frick's sake. Educators, have you ever had a real genius in class? What made him or her so smart? When I was student teaching, I had a work-study gig at a wraparound program in my city. It was half tutoring, half daycare for students that needed a place to go between that time when school ended but before their parents got home. While it was mostly populated by middle and high school students, there were a handful of very young children as well, 5 to 6 years old. One very little girl, she couldn't have been older than 6, was probably 5, approached me with a box of chess. She didn't know how to play, but said her father played and she wanted to learn how. I'm not a chess expert, but I've played a good amount of times and read a few books, and I can beat my friends or a hard computer. To clarify that, I'm talking about the hard setting on my phone. It's about 1500 ELO. I'm somewhere above that, but probably not by much. I met with this little girl for about 30 minutes every day. In 2 days, she understood all the rules and could play competently. At the end of the week, she tied the game in a stalemate. At the end of the second week, I never won again. Turns out she was the daughter of a professor at my college, and he was an internationally ranked chess player. When I ran into him, he couldn't thank me enough for teaching his daughter chess, as his wife had issued a decree that he wasn't allowed to teach or play or mention chess around their daughter. Understandable, didn't want to pressure her or discourage her. Chess was in these people's genes, man. I teach a university-level writing course for people who typically aren't in writing-heavy majors, math, science, etc. It's hard to make a 100 in a writing course for anyone, because even great writers do something wrong in papers sometimes. A missing citation, argument could be more nuanced, rush through conclusion, etc. All mistakes that will at least take you from a 100 to a 98 or something. This kid made a stone-cold 100 on every paper. Like, I literally couldn't find anything wrong in any of them. That is bizarre for even great writers. I've never felt more worthless as a teacher because there was just nothing I could suggest to improve unless I started making stuff up. I found out later that he had a 100 in all of his classes that semester, including some really difficult upper-level STEM ones. I don't know if he was a genius, but he's probably the closest I've had, and I wonder if having a 99 average would feel like a disappointment to him. My ex taught primary school, and she gave her class a weekly spelling test and said anyone who bettered their score from last week would receive a chocolate. Most kids got 15 or above out of 20, except for one kid who got 0. She said all the other kids had made fun of him, as kids would, but he was strangely calm about it. Didn't get stressed from the teasing, as most kids would. Next test, he got 1. Same ordeal, but received a chocolate as per the rules. Next week 2, then 3, then 4, receiving a chocolate each week. I didn't fathom a 10-year-old kid could conduct something so cunning. This was an odd 15 years ago, wouldn't be surprised if he was super successful now. Smart kid, but I'm not sure that the right lesson was being taught to him. I have taught at university level for decades and have certainly come across some very smart kids. High success most often correlates with an element of obsession and work ethic. There are, however, 2 students out of the 10,000 plus I have taught who stand out. Student 1 was deeply obsessed with his area of study and just about anything else. He rarely went to the lectures he had signed up for and could be found sitting in the back of classes of every subject you could imagine. He was a socially very engaged person whose enthusiasm was exhausting. His final GPA was very mediocre, a fact that did not bother him in the slightest. He had no interest in the minutiae of undergraduate study. He was working at a PhD level and beyond in his final undergraduate year, sucking every bit of information out of his professors. He ultimately became a high-tech multimillionaire. Student number 2 may be what you're looking for and is the only example I've encountered. This was a very shy and humble young man who took a long time to get to know, but was very engaging once you did. He came from a working-class family with no history of higher education and worked long hours at McDonald's. The first thing I noticed was the truly extraordinary quality of his work, effortlessly solving problems that previous students had not even come close to solving. His ability to pick up complex ideas and even extend them was unrivaled. Other professors reported the same. Pressures of work and many other problems resulted in him not turning up to class often, but he would still ace the course. In his final term, he did not attend a single class of any subject. He simply turned up for the final exam and midterm. He won the undergraduate gold medal for the university. He sadly now is socially dysfunctional, unemployed, and has been in trouble with the law. I always felt the system did not serve him well. I'm not sure about genius, but I'm currently teaching a very bright student in a class that is supposedly remedial. His home life is horrible and his behavior presents a serious challenge. But he can skim my notes before a lesson and completely understand it. To keep him engaged, I will sometimes ask him to help me explain a concept, and he can do it just as well, if not sometimes better than I can. He's gotten a 100% on every test and quiz that we've had this year. I asked the principal why the student is in the class that he's in, and he said that administrators won't put him in advanced classes because his behavior is distracting others. I've recommended this student for advanced classes next year, and I have an assistant principal on my side now. We're working with him on his behavior, which has shown improvement, especially in the past few weeks. High school history teacher here. The genius student I had didn't open the textbook once, took very little notes, came to review sessions, yet sat attentively and answered every question I asked aloud correctly. Showed up to all my tests with just a pencil and would be first to finish nearly every time. Only question he ever got wrong was a bonus one in my first month of teaching that asked the students to correctly spell my last name, as the majority never call me anything but Miss. Fantastic all-round kid too. Athlete, in the musicals, social, loved by all. Got into every college he applied for. Michael was 7 when I met him, and what set him apart was his ability to direct his own learning, his well-rounded intelligence, and his genuine love of learning. He was in my 3rd grade class, and it was clear right away that he was smart. Could do any math we gave him, spell anything, reading on a higher level than we tested for. And I teach in a town that's pretty pretentious about its kids. Very high socioeconomic level, tons of kids go to Ivy Leagues, many parents think their kid is a genius. Michael's mum knew he was smart, but didn't seem to get how smart. But he was never the kind to show off or want to impress people. He loved learning and was so excited to share it with everyone. Some noteworthy things he did: taught himself about the stock market. His mum wouldn't let him invest money, so he invested theoretical amounts and then showed her what it would have earned. Came in with an autobiography of George Bush to read during the silent reading. Not a kid version, the official biography. He was able to tell me about it and commented that he disagrees with Bush politically, but felt bad for him because he thought he was pushed into politics by wanting to live up to his dad, but wasn't happy in it. Noticed some languages have similarities, so started mapping out how he thought they were related. This was in 2nd grade. In 3rd grade, he showed me his map and I told him about language family trees, and he was so excited. He got really into language isolates and wanted to learn Basque. Related to this, he made himself flashcards of Greek and Latin roots to help his spelling and vocabulary. Taught himself hexadecimal and binary and was working on other computer languages. He was incredibly socially intuitive and empathetic. He would say to me, "I think so-and-so is upset," and the kid in question would be fine. Inevitably, before the day ended, that kid would have a meltdown or ask to talk to me about an issue. I learned fast to trust Michael's judgment. This also made him a really great friend. He did it with me too. He'd ask if I was okay and I'd be having a really rough day. It was so strange but sweet to have this tiny kid say things like, "Let me know what I can do to support you today." Oh, and I've thought of another. He was also musically very gifted, taught himself some instruments, and could identify pretty obscure musical pieces by ear. He moved at the end of the year and I lost touch. It was so great getting to be his teacher. It's cheesy, but I learned so much about how to teach and support gifted students by working with him. As someone who basically speaks 1.5 languages despite working in both for many years, I'm incredibly envious of just this kid's talent for picking languages up. Wow. I'm a former teacher. Geniuses just know things. There's not much you can teach them in today's schools because they're so far ahead of the rest of the class that you can't teach them and the rest of the students at the same time. I had a student who reads books in class. If I asked her to explain what I had just said, she explained it perfectly without looking up from the book. Some students complained about her making A's while reading books in class while they listened and didn't make A's. I couldn't help that. She was bored in class. I could waste classes' time scolding her, or I could leave her alone. I teach French, and I think I currently have one in my French 4 class. This kid is insane. Knows stuff that I've never explicitly taught, demonstrated on in-class assessments, so no Google Translate happening here. She's also not the cheating kind of kid. She masters difficult grammatical concepts without even needing to practice them. All I have to say is, this is how and why you use the subjunctive, and she gets it. Perfectly. Every time. In speech, in writing, everything she does is meticulous, well thought out, and above and beyond what I ask for. And she's like this in every class. I have good students in my school, really good students, affluent district, but this girl absolutely takes the cake. Helps teach a student at another high school who is an extremely talented art student. This kid has the ability to take something from concept to in front of you, in reality, in less than a few hours. He helped design and build an entire set for a play we did on a ridiculously small budget. What made him so smart is his ability to think through all of the logical steps of the process immediately. He figured out the potential problems before they happened and took steps to avoid them from the planning stages. To me, this is what makes someone an actual genius. The ability to understand and work through a problem quickly and effortlessly that most others struggle with. It is absolutely incredible just how wide the gap is between the lowest performer and the highest performer in a single classroom. I teach AP Physics among other things, and one of my students got finished with his work in 1/4 of the time through the class and gave everyone at his table the answers just so he could talk with his friends about the particularly relative nature of mathematics. It was fantastic to see. At a table right next to his, I had a student ask me, "Why does NASA need money to build things if they're so important to build? Shouldn't they just build them?" Please support tracked learning. I think this kid just solved our national debt issue. We don't need to pay anyone. If the work is important, they'll do it. Not a genius per se, but I've had a few very gifted kids in my classes. Sometimes they're just naturally gifted or their parents push them or support them outside of school. Some want to learn as many new skills as possible and absorb all the information you give them. They can be left to work on something as long as it interests them. Others know they're capable of doing very well, but they don't care and slack off a bit because they know they can. It's very difficult to motivate these students sometimes. Sometimes they get bored by the work or don't want to write the reports that go with it. This can sometimes be a problem because most pieces of coursework require certain things which must be in it to receive a good grade, and they question the need for it. One very, very gifted girl I taught was an absolute pleasure to have in class. I remember doing a couple of things on the Nepal earthquakes when they happened last year. I was a geography teacher, and she wrote an absolutely outstanding essay on the impacts and everything, comparing it to some other examples, things like that. I think what really helped her to do so well was the fact that her parents were very, very supportive and nice people, also intelligent, and they kept just enough pressure on her to do well without being helicopter parents. She had a really positive attitude to school and academia in general and could see the value of everything she learned. I spoke to her English teacher after getting this incredible essay, and she said she was writing at a similar level then. By the way, she was 11 and writing at the sort of level and detail I'd expect from my 17 to 18-year-olds. Apparently she read a lot of books and was always just interested. Brilliant stuff. I actually learnt stuff from her on occasion, which was amazing and always made me smile. Anyway, I showed this essay to a member of senior management who thought after seeing it, it was plagiarism, but she wrote it there in front of me. I miss teaching when I think back to pupils like her. I think the most interesting kid I ever taught was during my teaching practice. He was a 14-year-old kid called David, not especially interested in school, preferring to be outside messing with his mates or playing football, but he had the most interesting style of writing I've ever come across. So articulate and mature, yet with a quirky, humorous edge to it that showed a real independence of thought. I loved reading his work. It's been 10 years since I taught him, and I've yet to come across another pupil of his quality. I only taught him for a few months before I moved to a different placement, but I did take him aside before I left to tell him that I thought he had a real talent he could pursue. There was something innate with him, a real natural flair and talent. Others have achieved great success through pure hard work and determination, but I wouldn't class them as geniuses. I think I'm going to echo the sentiment of many of the other commenters that I read while getting through these stories now. This is a slightly demoralizing read to some of us who didn't come out of the womb with a brain firing on all cylinders with talent in all subjects. Oh well. I don't know if I would say that she was a genius, but there is one student I always think about. This was at a school that is known for having some of the smartest students around, at least in the on-paper sense, that they had great grades and test scores. And this was a class that attracted a lot of the highest achievers, read pre-med requirement. She had the highest average for all of the regular graded work, labs, problem sets, exams, but there's only so far you can stand apart from the others with those, particularly at a school like that. What allowed me to be completely blown away by her was her research papers. This was one of those core courses that had multiple professors, so he had to standardize the material, and there was a standard rubric for how the students were supposed to write the research papers. What essential questions they should be answering along the way, how to do the primary literature research, and how to cite your sources. The papers I got almost always fell into one of two categories: the C or below papers and the A papers. The C papers were from the students who, for some reason, didn't really get it with the rubric and still wrote it like it was a high school paper where they were obviously just rewording what they read on Wikipedia, plus some light cut-and-paste plagiarism from the abstracts of papers they clearly never read, and not enough citations. The A papers were from students who simply followed the rubric to the letter. They answered every question in the paper consecutively as it was written in the rubric, cited their sources, always reading and using just enough papers to be sufficient and no more, with the occasional sprinkling of the subtle cut-and-paste plagiarism. These papers were usually dull as crap, but often never had so much as a typo, so I pretty much had to give them an A because they did what I asked them to do. I never liked including the research papers in this course. because the students were clearly not mature enough to really tackle the material in a productive way. They were fine freshman papers, but a waste of everyone's time in the end. Then, one day, I had this student in my class. She never followed the rubric and its dopey questions at all. She thought of her own questions for the topic, the ones that were the most interesting and relevant to that topic specifically. Many of these questions were truly insightful and open-ended as well. She went into the literature and really read and clearly understood these papers that should have been way over the head of any normal teenager college student. Then, on top of that, she would obtain the data from these papers and run her own different analyses using very complex methodologies that I didn't teach until the most advanced courses for seniors and graduate students. So she was clearly just teaching herself as she went along. Lastly, she was a terrific writer, maybe one of the best I've ever read. Her papers always came in way too long for the limit. Normally a sign the paper was an editing nightmare, and I loved reading them. She knew how long the paper needed to be to cover the topic, and my limits were just suggestions she chose to ignore, and rightfully so. She is the type of student I think should get an A, not the other I dotters and T crosses, but alas, in the world of grade inflation, about 25% of my students always got A's. I've had a lot of really smart students, but never had another one like her. I love students like that. I teach an honors class and the kids are so set on following a rubric to the letter that I love to set them up with an intentionally vague assignment in order to spur creativity. For example, to demonstrate that they understand the thematic elements of the literary movement for transcendentalism, I gave them the assignment, represent transcendentalism in another medium. So I actually got projects like a stop-motion video, a fake Tumblr, a children's book, a memory box, paintings, photography, etc. Honors kids tend to get the concepts quicker, but show reluctance if not given explicit instructions. I force them to be more interpretive. I had a student last fall in an Introduction to American Politics course, who was a computer science major taking the course as an elective. This kid absorbed information like a sponge and performed better on exams and essays than any of the political science majors. He would often drop by my office just to chat about politics and statistical programming. He eventually stopped coming to classes many days because I had to dumb down all the material so much for the other students. He still passed with flying colors and had a higher average than anyone else in the class, and eventually started a double major in political science and computer science. Students like that make the job worth the effort. My point here was that not only one single student makes the job worth the while, actually teaching is only 1/3 of my job, in addition to helping advise students and conducting my own research. I devote my position as a professor to all of my students individually, if they're willing to accept that attention. Many students refuse to come to class, complete assignments, study for exams, or show up at all during office hours. This is unfortunate for those students, and if I just described you, then you need to get off Reddit and read a fricking book. The truth is, I love my job very much. If I didn't, I would quit. Simple as that. I came for the story of a genius. I stayed for the repressed, salty rant of a college professor. Fun to get insight into the mind of one of our higher education authority figures. I did, however, it's a bit of a sad story. I worked at a special school for you people labeled as emotionally disturbed. One of my students would finish assignments in under 10 minutes. I would try to differentiate for him, but I'll be honest that I was a new teacher and not very good at it, combined with the fact that I was teaching 5 subjects and dealing with a variety of classroom challenges. Logically, his response was, "Why do I have to do more work just because I'm smart?" He had a fair point, and I couldn't see me forcing him to complete work that probably didn't challenge him anyway. So I let him play RuneScape. Now before you get pitchforks out, let me explain my logic. I, a bit of a nerd myself, understood the mental exercise of contemplating the most efficient or effective means of doing something in a video game, and although I never played RuneScape, figured it offered him an outlet to do something similar. Unfortunately, being a genius isn't all fun and games. Intellectual theorists say the further your IQ is from the norm of 100, the harder time you have relating to the masses. As I mentioned before, I was at a special school. This young man struggled with peer relations and had a crippling anxiety that often manifested in self-harm. He would beat his head on his desk, punch himself, slam his face into the corner of metal filing cabinets, etc. If we were lucky, he would just crawl under a desk and cry and cry. My heart went out to him, as I know sometimes thinking of my future and the world around me can turn into a grim task. I can only imagine how it looked to a young boy placed in a special ed setting when his mind was left to wander. I know my colleagues may disagree, but I still feel RuneScape was therapy. I've had some smart kids, so smart that others think they're a genius, but for me, they're just really clever. That being said, there was this one kid. Not that bright, but he did this one thing that had genius written all over it. I sat there talking him through some trig. Got to the point where it was something like tan 65 and I thought, damn, I forgot to grab a calculator. What did he do? He told me it to the nearest whole number. I was shocked and thought it was a fluke. I gave him another and guess what? He got that right too. He wasn't the brightest kid, but he knew his trig ratios. A kid in Standard Algebra 2 who never did a lick of homework but made hundreds on every test. I talked to him and he said he didn't see the point in wasting his time in homework when he already knew how to do the problems. A month or two into the year, I told him I'd just make his test average his grade. I also had a talk with him to say that sometimes in life you can cut to the chase when you know your stuff, but sometimes you still have to jump through hoops that seem stupid even when you don't see the point, and even when there might not be a point. To those saying that's a bad thing to say to an intelligent kid, try starting a business or patenting your game-changing invention without getting the proper government permits, etc. That even though I'm giving him a break, sometimes you have to do your homework, even when it seems unnecessary. As an aside, I later taught information technology, and I told the kids that if they earned their industry certification at the end of the year, A+ or Microsoft Technology Associate, depending on grade level, I'd change their grades so they got an A for the year. Because earning the certification proves mastery of the concepts I was teaching. Had a 70 to 80% pass rate, and I really think this policy had something to do with that. It motivated the kids to work hard, and I almost never had to change a grade. Cops. Are there any crimes that you intentionally don't enforce? Just before Thanksgiving, my dad called me and informed me that I had failed to pay a parking ticket and that my license had been suspended. Concerned that I would get pulled over and ticketed, I decided to pay the ticket right there and then on my phone. Since I couldn't print the confirmation screen out, I just took a picture of the screen with my phone so I could prove that I had paid the ticket in the unlikely event that I got pulled over. Well, lo and behold, as I'm driving home for Thanksgiving the next day, I get pulled over by a state trooper. He immediately recognizes that my license was suspended and starts explaining that I was driving illegally and so on and so forth. Before he can lecture me too long, I whip out my phone, scroll to the picture of the ticket payment confirmation screen and hand him the phone. As soon as he grabbed the phone, he sort of furrowed his brow and in a completely teed-off tone he goes, "What the hell is this?" I'm about to calmly explain the situation to him when suddenly he tilts the screen towards me and I'm staring directly at a picture of my eggplant. My freaking heart stopped beating and I could feel all the blood in my body rushing to my face. I had accidentally flipped one picture too far to an eggplant pic I took for some ex-girlfriend when I was hammered, and I had then handed the phone to the cop. Time basically stopped as I was sure he was going to arrest me for some kind of harassment crime and put me on a watch list for life. Mortified, I shakily scrolled back to the payment confirmation pic and handed the phone back to him. He reluctantly looked at the screen, nodded, and then let out a little laugh. As he tossed my phone back to me, he said, "Have a nice Thanksgiving," and walked back to his car shaking his head. I drove home in complete silence and deleted any and all eggplant pics the moment I pulled into my parents' driveway. I am forever in that dude's debt for just laughing it off instead of throwing me in prison. In conclusion, I accidentally showed a picture of my member to a state trooper and he didn't smash my face in with a baton. I will try my best not to arrest a parent in front of a small child. With a misdemeanor, you have quite a bit of officer discretion, but I've gone so far as to wait for an hour or so until a family member can pick up the kid before I handcuff the parent. It just really bothers me. I want kids to trust police officers if they ever need help, not be afraid of them. That's a good level of compassion there. Have to arrest you, but wait until mum comes to fetch the kid so the kid doesn't have a scarring memory of daddy. Driving between St. Louis, Missouri and Dayton, Ohio, I got pulled over around midnight by a cop on the freeway. I was confused a bit since I hadn't been speeding, but my car had California plates, as that's the state where I lived at the time, and I thought, well, maybe I have a taillight out or something. First thing he says when he sees my license and registration, "California, huh? Got a lot of pot in the car?" Because I'm a moron and I was tired, my answer was, "Define a lot." He did not find it funny. Luckily, his partner did. The guy with my license and registration, a younger white guy, kept his stone-cold face and said, "Step out of the car, please," while the older black cop just tried to keep from laughing out loud. "Hands on the hood, feet apart," he says, and he starts to pat me down. "Mind if you tell me what you're looking for?" I ask. "Do you have anything in your pockets that'll harm me? Needles or something?" "I have a Swiss Army knife in my right pocket, but it's all closed up," I say. "How do I know that?" he asks accusingly. Again, I turn into Captain Moron. Because I wouldn't keep a naked 3-inch blade only a couple of inches from my member while driving across the country. This time the older cop does laugh out loud and the younger guy looks flustered. He tells me slowly to turn around with hands above my shoulders, then he backs up 4 steps and says to use my left hand to empty my pockets onto the hood of the car. The older cop just sighs and says, "Hold on a sec, don't move," and pulls the younger guy to the back of the cop car where they have a very private and brief conversation. The younger one gets into the car and gets on the radio, while the older one comes up to me and says, "Look, you know why we pulled you over? Because you were swerving in the lane a bit. Thought you might be drunk. How long have you been driving?" "About 5 hours. I left St. Louis around 7, hoping to make it to Dayton." "You been drinking?" "Diet Coke and Gatorade mostly. No alcohol or anything." "You need some sleep, son. Dayton's still about 45 minutes away. Think you can make it?" To be honest, I was kind of tired, but I think you guys just scared me awake. He smiles. "Alright, hang tight a sec," and walks back to the car. He comes back. "You have 2 bench warrants in California, and there's an APB out in the car as stolen after an armed robbery." "What?" I say. "That doesn't make any sense. I never did anything." I'm panicking now. I'm freaking out. In a second, my night just went from boring to awful. "Actually, just messing with you. You're free to go. Hopefully that adrenaline will keep you awake for an hour," he says. I laugh and say, "Jesus frickin' Christ, that is effed up, man." He just smiles and says, "Take care, stay on the road." I got to Dayton around 1 a.m. and couldn't fall asleep until 3. That dude knew his crap. Well, I'm not a cop, but this happened to me during my substance using days. This was years and years ago, and I'm proud to be clean now. I was driving to work when a cop recognized me and knew I was driving with a suspended license. He searched my car before he arrested me. As we were pulling up to the jail, he held up a bag of needles he found under my seat. He said, "If you promise to quit this, I'll throw these away before you pull into the station." My mom bailed me out a few hours later and took me straight to rehab. That cop was awesome. He saved me from being in big-time trouble, and likely saved my life by scaring me into rehab. You have no idea how often us cops try to do this. If we know someone is a frequent flyer, and we recognize what the underlying problem is, we will go out of our way to solve that problem rather than just making the arrest. Because I know if I can solve this person's addiction, illness, or apathy, then I won't have to continue to take dispatched runs there. I've got junkies and drunks into rehab. I've paid for a young working girl's bus ticket home to Chicago so she could be with her family and her support system. She was in a city all by herself, and her pimp had her so strung out she couldn't tell you what day of the week it was. If I know someone is religious, or their family is religious, I'll use that as leverage to try and get people into rehab. Arresting someone, as said before, is just a tool used to temporarily solve the problem. It's a band-aid, not a cure. By the way, by my estimates, I'd say that 70 to 75% of all domestic-related run-ins have an addiction element in them, substances or booze. 95% of homeless that I've dealt with are addicts themselves, and I'd say 65% have mental health issues. My first run-in with the law at 17. I was driving on a 3-lane highway at rush hour going 85 in the far left lane while tailgating a big SUV. A van parked in the left shoulder suddenly came into view. I had drifted slightly into the shoulder and swerved to avoid sideswiping the van. Being a young, inexperienced driver, I overcorrected. Full panic set in as my Honda Civic slid into the left guardrail, sailed across all 3 lanes of traffic, flipped around, facing the wrong direction, and finally skidded to a halt. It shook me up good, but I didn't hit a single soul. Cop: "How fast were you going?" Me: "About 70 to 75? "The speed limit here is 55. Are you sure you were going that fast?" "Maybe I was going faster. It could have been 80 or 85. Him, face-palming: "The speed limit here is 55. If you were going faster, I have to ticket you for reckless driving. I don't want to ticket you. Tell me, what's the speed limit here?" 55? "How fast were you going?" 55? "That's right. You were going 55. Then to the next question. "I didn't see any damage to the guardrail that you hit. Did you?" "I don't know. There could be some damage. I didn't see it." "If there's damage to the guardrail, you'll have to pay a few $1,000s to fix it. Now, did you see any damage to the guardrail?" "I didn't." "No, I didn't see any damage either." "Good." In conclusion, cop had me change my story so as not to incriminate myself. This sounds like something I can relate to, too stupid to accept the obvious easy out I was being offered. Here's a follow-up comment below. Reminds me, in college I lived on the second floor of a small apartment complex. Everyone in the buildings was students, and 90% of the buildings in the area housed students. The people downstairs were having a decent-sized party that had spilled outside onto the deck and front yard, which isn't really a big deal as it was a weekend night with nothing but students around. A high school student who was at the party had wandered off about a block away and was peeing on a fence. A cop was driving by and turned his lights on. Kid, of course, runs right back to the party, which causes the cops to come and break it up. As the cops arrive, I head back upstairs and watch everything unfold from my balcony. The cops are talking to the guys who live below. Cop: "This kid we saw down the street says you're responsible for him. If you are, we have to arrest, ticket, whatever the punishment you, for providing alcohol to a minor. Are you responsible for him?" Neighbor: "Yes, he's my friend." "Are you sure you're responsible?" "Yes." "Are you really sure?" "Yes." "If you don't know him, we will just call his parents to pick him up. So are you responsible for him?" "Oh, wait, no, I've never seen him before." Police officer here. There are plenty I don't enforce, but as stated above, I have enforcement discretion in 99% of situations. My hands are rarely forced to pursue charges where the victim is the state or city. Traffic violations, substance charges, etc. I personally try not to enforce anything that I'd do. I speed sometimes I'll roll a stop sign, and other minor things. I hate working traffic, and generally stay too busy bouncing from call to call to actually do it, so that also has a bearing on what I enforce. Now that being said, I will hammer you if you're causing direct danger to another person. If you're excessively speeding during rush hour, through a school zone, or with kids in your car, then I will issue paperwork all day. But it generally has to be a situation that causes immediate danger to someone other than yourself. If it's 3 a.m. and you're doing 70 in a 50 on a back road, chances are I'm just going to let you be. Also, petty stuff. There's a lot of technicalities written in laws. Sometimes slight variations make something legal become illegal. I try to avoid crap like that. I try to keep a good repertoire with the people in the areas I work in. So taking enforcement action on some bullcrap law is a quick way to make enemies. I've learned over the years that the people I'm nice to today may be the ones who come to my rescue tomorrow. It's happened before. Warnings are my best friend. People appreciate warnings. Usually, "Hey man, you know your headlight's out? Try to get it fixed, okay?" is enough so that next time you see them, it'll be working. And finally, Reddit's favorite subject, green herb. I work with a lot of younger guys. We're all pretty progressive and understand that Mary J. prohibition is a joke. Most of us try our best not to take action on a personal use unless we absolutely have to. Sadly, the older guys around here don't share our views on the subject, and what's even worse is that there are sergeants, lieutenants, and captains. Sometimes our hands are forced, but I work with a very good department that does allow us tons of enforcement discretion. Not a cop, but my dad is. This isn't exactly a refusal to enforce a particular law, but he works in an area of higher crime rates and he's always trying to instill a sense of trust in the youth. One day, he was walking back to his patrol car after a call and he saw some younger guys playing basketball. He walks over to them and sternly asks for the ball. They ask him why, but with no explanation, he again tells them to hand the ball over. They disappointedly toss the ball over, thinking it's just another butthole cop trying to ruin their day. Instead, my dad drains a 3 and just walks away. He believes that interactions like this with cops will give the youth a better sense of trust in law enforcement systems. Just thought I'd share. He would have looked like such a tool if he missed. Cop here. I generally don't arrest for small amounts of Mary J. A, I don't think that green herb is bad, and B, it's nearly legalized medicine at this point anyway. I'm not big on ticket writing. Tickets are expensive and almost everyone is broke right now. I find that usually a 2-minute conversation with an officer makes people change their driving habits anyway. Plus they feel super lucky for having caught a break. You need to remember that officers have a lot of discretion. However, if there's a victim and probable cause, that discretion can go away. For instance, shoplifting a $2 item. If the store caught you and insists on prosecution, there's not much that I can do. The thing is, I still have discretion over what to do with a person, i.e. release them from the scene with a ticket, bring them to the station to fingerprint or photograph or issue a ticket and release, or book them into jail overnight. Any contacts can turn into a dangerous situation. Go to odmp.org and look at the line of duty deaths just for 2012. 2 of them occurred during regular prisoner transports. Generally, the more dangerous the call seems, the more amped up, aware, and prepared you are. I'm more worried about getting shot as I open the bathroom door after taking a leak at a gas station. I've never thought about the downtime of a police's life being so dangerous, and the fact that a lot of fatalities can occur at the least expected time in it. It does make sense, I suppose. I do not enforce Mary J so long as 1. It's a misdemeanor account, 2. You're not selling, 3. You're not a prick. That being said, I will make you dispose of it. I'm allergic to it or something. Within seconds of coming close to it, I will get a migraine. Homosexual behavior is still on the books in Texas under deviant behavior. I don't enforce this. The selling of armadillos is against the law in Texas as well. I won't arrest you, but I'm documenting it. It's like a bucket list of offenses I want to come across as a cop. I am not likely to write any traffic citation so long as it's not a hazardous violation and so long as you agree to fix the issue. I usually try and find all drunks an alternative to jail unless they're driving or fighting. I never let something slide because it might be dangerous. I signed up knowing full well I can die doing this job, and have used myself as a shield to protect people on more than one occasion. I hope this helps. Back when I was a cop, 12 years ago, I never arrested anyone for possession of Mary J. It was pointless, and there are already too many people in jail for what I deem minor possession charges. I remember I stopped a guy. Well, I didn't stop him, he was stopped at a stop sign for 13 minutes before I pulled up behind him. I questioned him, realized that he was baked out of his mind because he told me he was waiting for the stop sign to turn green. Pulled him out of the car, got permission to search, found a bag with about a half an ounce in it, and I went over to him and asked if he had someone who could come and get him. He called his girlfriend, and as we waited, I threw his bag in the ditch. When his girlfriend got there, I said this to him: "I'm gonna sit right over here in that parking lot and do my reports. If I see you back here before I leave, I'll arrest you. I don't care if you come back and get the stuff from the ditch, but it better be after I leave." He didn't come back, but the bag was gone by the time my shift ended. I've always been a proponent of legalizing Mary J. Why? Because if we're at a bar and I'm drunk and I bump into another drunk guy, chances are we're going to fight. If I'm high and I bump into another high guy, chances are we laugh. It can't be legalized for a myriad of reasons that I won't get into here. The premise of the question is inherently flawed because of a common misconception about how policing works. The law is less a set of rules cops have to enforce and more a tool cops have for handling situations. It's pretty rare that cops have to enforce the law. Felonies and certain domestic or abuse crimes are the only ones that have to be charged, and even there, it's not hard to find wiggle room on how you define the crime. For example, public drunkenness is a crime. Do I stand in front of bars and make everyone do sobriety tests? No. Now, if you're yelling and screaming like a jackass and making a scene, I'll come up and tell you it's time to get gone. If that doesn't work, I'll arrest you for public drunkenness and make you bookings problem. So do I choose not to enforce particular laws? Yeah, all the time. It's basically my entire job. And this trickles down into your other questions. Enforcing the law is always weighed against what risks are associated with the arrest, how likely the victims are to testify, and a dozen other factors. Law enforcement is more art than science. Bonus secret, most cops, particularly in cities, don't want to arrest people for the day-to-day silliness. It's a lot of paperwork, you're now responsible for the person while you get them cited or booked, and then you have to go to court on your days off. It's really just a huge pain in the butt. The trick to slipping out of most arrests is about making letting you go less of a hassle than arresting you. Question: when you say making letting you go less of a hassle than arresting you, can you elaborate a little? Less hassle is as follows. Number 1. Get gone. If a cop says move along, your best bet is to be somewhere else. 98% of the time, this is all the bar owners or neighbors want. The last guy standing there arguing about how the Constitution gives him the right to sing Free Bird at 3 a.m. on a public street corner usually loses that argument and a chunk of his next paycheck. Number 2. Be a good sobriety wingman. When I'm dealing with the numerous situations that come from drunk people, I usually look for their sober friend because he's the best bet to defuse the situation. Don't be afraid to step in for your friend and say something like, "Officer, I know he's gotten out of hand, my car is over here, let me take him home, and he won't be any more trouble." Rare is the cop who will pass up an opportunity to make a drunk person someone else's problem. 3. Fight it out in the morning. There's this kind of bizarre belief that cops are going to be your referee for bar fights, domestics, and all kinds of assorted nonsense. We're never going to figure out who was right. We've only been called because the fighting or screaming. If it's a bar thing, just let it go and move on. If it's a domestic, don't try and convince the cop you were right. Convince the cop you're reasonable enough to not fight anymore. Offer to take a walk or stay with a friend. Come back to argue in the morning when you've got a cooler head. In conclusion, cops are there to de-escalate the situation or lock people up. If you're willing to be the one to de-escalate, you're more likely to avoid being locked up. There we go, we not only have a list of crimes that cops are likely to let people walk for, we also have suggestions of ways to increase your likelihood of that outcome. I policed a small town for a decade and have been at a city station for longer. Generally, if I come across a situation where I could use my discretion, I would. For example, I would usually convey a drunk home rather than have them sober up in the cells. For recidivist offenders where a brush with the law was not sufficient, or where a person's behavior warranted more direct action, I would enforce the law to the letter. I'm all about giving people a chance, but only up to a point, even if I don't agree with the penalty that might be enacted at court, or if I don't agree with the law itself. I have never not arrested just because of a dangerous situation. I couldn't live with myself if a failure to act on my part led to a bad day for a member of the public. That, and I don't want to leave a job undone, just so some of my workmates have to come in later to do it. Hopefully that answers your question. I remember during high school prom, 9 to 10 years ago, I had my parents' car. It was a pretty fast car at that time, a 300 horsepower V8. I was driving like a complete idiot, going over double the speed limit. A cop sees me and follows me just as I pull into my friend's driveway. I walk over to him knowing that I've messed up big time. He was pretty intimidating and borderline yelling at me. He eventually let me off, saying he didn't want to ruin my prom night. I was basically yes sirring the entire time while crapping my pants. Wherever this cop is, I have never been pulled over for speeding since. You did a damn good job, and I now race my current car in a controlled track environment. I still love to drive fast, but it never happens on public roads. Arbitrary laws stopping drinking are counterproductive. Sensible drinking should be something that you're brought into. In continental Europe, it's perfectly normal to drink a small amount of wine with a meal. You just mix in water to lower the alcohol content, and drinking sensibly becomes the norm. When you make drinking illegal, all that happens is people start drinking with no prior experience and end up drinking to excess, which in turn promotes violence and makes many areas dangerous at night. I would make a distinction between laws that I chose not to enforce and crimes. I never wrote a speeding ticket for less than 15 over, unless there's an extenuating circumstance, school zone, extremely careless, butthole, etc. I also never got really excited about small amounts of Mary J, a violation as opposed to a crime in the state I worked in. Criminal offenses are a little different. I can't recall ever not enforcing a solid criminal offense, unless it was something small. Criminal trespass where it was easier to just run the person off, or if the person was rolling on someone else, or the victim wasn't interested in prosecution. That doesn't mean I wouldn't write a citation to appear and forward the case to the DA on a weak case or for other circumstances. Also, I once arrested a county commissioner's son for DUI and had a former friend arrested for it as well. I do not believe in breaks for nepotism. There are some circumstances that I'm aware of that police openly ignore some criminal activity because enforcement becomes impossible. Enforcing Mary J laws at Grateful Dead concerts would be pointless. What's the worst thing your parents have found on your phone or computer? Just so our listeners are aware, you're going to be getting more of an ASMR effect as I speak quieter and closer to the microphone. I've been a little bit sick and I want to avoid tearing my throat. I spent about 5 days in a mental institution about 15 months ago. I gave my mum the passcode to my phone for whatever reason, to either Snapchat people or read my text that I'd received, or something small, in and out like that. Like she had to click one thing, tell me what it said, respond, and close it. I was 16, by the way. Anyway, when I got home, she told me she found pictures of a negative pregnancy test on my phone from a month or so earlier, and she took me to a doctor. Turns out I had scar tissue in my uterus from a miscarriage 6-ish months earlier. Scared the crap out of me. Very grateful that she did it because the tissue could have inhibited me from having children in the future if it had gotten necrotic or something. I lived with my aunt briefly when I was about 12 years old. One night my uncle hooked me up with a bunch of video games and installed them on my computer. My brother said he saw my uncle find my adult flick stash on my computer, but I assumed he was messing with me. Well, next morning, apparently, my very uptight aunt barged into my room while I was on the computer and told me, "There are some things on your computer you need to delete." I immediately realized my brother was telling the truth, so under my aunt's burning gaze, I went to the adult flick folder to delete it. Only I have so much adrenaline going through me that instead of just deleting the folder itself, I decide to click it open. So now there's a bunch of extra large thumbnails showing on my monitor of hardcore adult flicks, while my aunt is standing right behind me. This gives me another shot of adrenaline and my 12-year-old head is swimming. I try to select all of the files, but my hands are so damn wigged out now that instead of being able to select all the thumbnails to delete them, I keep just double-clicking on an image of a girl getting railed by some gorilla of a man. This happens around 3 more times as I'm physically unable to make my hand work the mouse properly, and all I can think about is my aunt thinking, why in the world does this kid keep clicking on this crap? Eventually, I finally delete everything. Writing this has made me realize that I need to ask my uncle why he decided to be a rat next time I see him. When I was 11, they found out I search, "Does white snow affect cows?"
Well, does it? If I recall correctly, most mammals are affected by white snow.
With a body weight like that, it's going to be expensive. I don't see what the problem is personally. I Google that kind of thing all the time out of morbid curiosity. Before I had my own computer, I'd use my dad's desktop to browse the internet, listen to music, etc. I would message a friend of mine on Facebook quite a bit. We'd talk about a lot of stuff, but of course, mainly girls from school. Dad saw a few messages that were extremely explicit about a few girls from class, about wanting to be smothered by their various bodily parts and crap stuff like that. One of the most embarrassing moments of my life. Extremely passionate diary entries about Daniel Radcliffe from the Philosopher's Stone era. I was around 11, and the diary entries were in epistolary format. Cringe. Back in 1999 or so, my mum was embarrassed that I had a song called Horny Horns on the computer when we had to get it fixed. I told her it barely had any lyrics and it wasn't naughty at all, but she was worried the computer guy would think it was. When we got the computer back, the guy said I had some interesting taste in music in there, late 90s techno, and she said, "See? The only reason he listened to it is because it had horny in the name. I'm so embarrassed." I can imagine this guy with his pants down, lube, and tissues at the ready, only to click on it and it plays 90s techno. On the other hand, it does take real dedication to your craft to be able to pleasure yourself to a MIDI file. Mum saw my history of adult fun time scenes in TV shows and unspeakable act scenes. It was in 4th grade. I was curious and absolutely mortified.
Yeah, I found that stuff when I was 9. Thought it was way too adult for me.
So I searched prawn for kids and kid prawn. My parents are probably on some kind of list. This is somehow messed up and wholesome at the same time.
Ah yes, the curious kid searches. My son did this as well when he was about that age, except it was a little more gay. He didn't understand what that word meant, so he naturally went to YouTube to see what he could find. So he's seen some stuff at a young age. I accidentally sent my mum a fanfiction about SpongeBob getting the unspeakable act committed against him by a gang. When I was younger, my mum found a lesbian adult flicks on my computer. I blamed it on my grandma. I guess this isn't bad, but it did change my life. My sister went on a shared laptop, and I had stupidly left open my internet browser which had pro-anorexia websites and blogs still open. I was 14 or 15. She told my mum, who thought it was a cry for attention, but it really wasn't. I was furious that they'd found this, and was promptly sent into a network of doctors for my eating disorder. Kinda pre-rehab for those who aren't physically needing hospitalization, but mentally are messed up. It was a rough 4 years, but who knows where I'd be if I hadn't gotten the help I needed back then. I'm doing much better now. ED conquered. Nothing, 'cause I'm the best at hiding stuffs.
Hid my brother 7 years ago, and no one has found him yet. My mum found a Tumblr post when I was 18 where I'd said, "Wow, today I got 4 piercings and did it in the butt for the first time. #eventful. Like others have said, my browser history. However, my mother printed them out, like Excel format, 4 or 5 pages long like some sort of really screwed up Walmart receipt. She then sat me down and read them aloud back to me in front of my 2 brothers. I tried the old political fallback of deny, deny, deny when she dropped the bombshell. My email login was at the top and bottom of every list. This is really bad, but when I was 13, I was super afraid the zombie apocalypse was going to really happen. So I found and downloaded the Army's Improvised Weapons and Munitions Handbook. Yeah, imagine a 13-year-old with a file labeled explosives on his laptop. Man, I now understand why kids thought I was going to shoot up the school when I mentioned mixing 2 ingredients would make it go boom in chemistry. Plus, I probably ended up on a list somewhere. Now that I'm thinking about it, I might have a flash drive with the book somewhere in my room. To all the people asking for a link, yeah, I'm not going to go down for distributing bomb-making material, so no thanks. And we're all poorer for it, sir. Share your crazy prepper life with us so we can devour it wholesale.
wet word for female anatomy games.com, and then I learned about deleting history. Literally the same thing happened to me. All I think about is how happy I am I learned that lesson before I realized I was gay. Parents didn't find, I found on the family computer. My brother would stay up late and look up a bunch of adult flicks and he wouldn't clear the browser history. I, being a very nice brother, would clear it every morning. Eventually, I got so sick of having to do that I changed the desktop wallpaper to say, "Please remember to clear your browser history." That's pretty great. How did he respond to that? He probably thought it was from his parents. Imagine that feeling. I did this to my dad once. Looked up the song Redbone on his phone and it autofilled to RedTube. Changed his home screen to an image saying, "Clear your history." I did a kind of similar thing to my dad once when I was 15. I was looking for a movie to watch on his computer. He torrents movies instead of buying them because he travels for work a lot and it's easier to have movies and TV shows on files rather than dragging DVDs and stuff around. But anyway, back to the story. And instead of having a nice Harry Potter movie to watch, I found his adult flick stash. I still to this day have no idea how I came across it, considering I've downloaded movies from his laptop numerous times. I renamed all the files to names like, "I know what you're doing," and "Ew," and "Father, I love you, but can you put these somewhere I can't find them, please?" I wonder if he found them. It has never once been discussed. My mum randomly asked for my phone, so I was like, "Sure." She went through my phone and I had forgotten that I'd downloaded a video from Pornhub about a few days before. She found it and it was a woman riding a guy on a couch. I was in 7th grade. Makes me cringe and laugh. Reminds me of my experience. She walked into the room I was in while I was on my laptop and read what I was reading over my shoulder. All adult fanfiction. I was like 12. She took my computer away and made me go pray. I'm female. I was around 12 years old when my dad found bondage searches on the computer. My searches for big-chested women as well. It was a very, very awkward talk. He taught me how to delete my browsing history too. I'm 23 now, so 11-ish years ago. We're best buddies and text basically every day. Even though his princess might have turned out to be into lesbian bondage stuff, I'm still his favorite kid, out of 5 kids. You're also my favorite out of his 5 kids. I was looking for a way to get high from household items. My mum was not happy or proud. She called me about it when I was 30 minutes into a weekend-long road trip. Sorry, Mum. When I was about 13, my mum found some satanic memes on my phone. They were jokes and pretty much parodies of just girly things on Tumblr. You know, like getting your nails matching with your best friend, just girly things. Like those, except she found one that went, sacrificing your best friends to Satan and pledging your allegiance to the Dark Lord, just girly things. With an image of someone holding a hammer and a nail on top of Justin Bieber's head, when he was just a coconut head, and ready to pound it. Some real edgy humor. Boy, did this land me in hot water. My mum found it, swore I was legitimately satanic, and started shaking and putting her hands over me talking about, "The power of Christ compels you, you leave, demon," and crap like that. Was I really satanic? No, just freaking edgy and dumb in the 8th grade. She tells the family she thinks I'm satanic. She tells the pastor at my local church that she thinks I'm being persuaded by Satan to do evil crap. That I'm giving into temptation. So cue me in this pastor's office as it's a private church/school and he has an office. And he talks to me about why Satan is evil and why I may feel like following him and not God. What's wrong? What's my home situation like? Just took a very awkward conversation when he realizes I'm some naive kid who probably didn't really follow Satan. Took a while for her to believe I wasn't trying to be satanic. She probably still thinks that I was serious, and if it wasn't, then it was too edgy and dark for me to be joking about at that age. But yeah, that's the worst thing. Never been caught lacking with adult flicks. Satanic memes, on the other hand, yes. It does baffle me how much of children's moral guidance seems to be placed in the hands of religious leaders in some places, instead of, educators and trained caregivers. Also, the next video contains numerous references to a particular form of Japanese media consisting of tentacles and adult content. I've invented my own word for it so that this video doesn't get taken down and demonetized. Thanks. Okay, Mom, firstly, you need to understand that this isn't prawn, right? It's called octoprawn. Yes, that's a Japanese phrase. I'm learning Japanese from these videos. Before I get to the part about learning Japanese though, let me comment first on the cultural implications of octopron. After the Second World War, which Japan lost after the nuclear bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the entire country underwent a period of self-reflection and soul-searching. They wanted to understand how events led to the rest of the world responding with such devastating atomic attacks. This led to a strong antipathy towards warmongering and international aggression. You may have heard about how the Japanese constitution doesn't allow the country to have an active military. Same idea. A lot of post-war Japanese culture is a reflection of such attitudes. For example, the Godzilla movies are not just about giant monsters fighting each other. They're about the horrors of unbridled atomic technology. Godzilla is always depicted as being powered by or healed by nuclear power, and how such a horrifying force can never be allowed to be unleashed on humanity again. On a similar note, Japanese animation enjoyed a resurgence of popularity after the war, due to the populace choosing to turn towards the comforting images of their youth. Japanese kids, much like the kids in our country, like to watch cartoons. As a result, psychologically speaking, cartoons represent a reminder of the simpler and more innocent age. This upsurge in popularity resulted in animated images pervading almost all of Japanese culture, from movies to television to advertising to music videos and so on and so forth. And because animated images were so widely accepted throughout Japan, they were used for almost every type of source material, or to tell any type of story. Animation was no longer the sole domain of children. You got animated movies that told very mature stories, like Ghost in the Machine or Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. Sometimes you get stories that involve very mature topics, like war or murder or the unspeakable act or torture. The Japanese have generally become quite accustomed to seeing depictions of such things in their animations. So yeah, that's why I was watching this movie. It's an epic tale about a space crew exploring a distant planet. The crew's all female because Japan's very into gender equality, and they run into a hostile alien with a bunch of tentacles, and well, I don't want to spoil the story for you, but let's just say the crew eventually figure out how to get along with the alien. It's a story about bridging cultural gaps and finding common ground. Seriously, it's worth watching. Okay, next, you remember how I talked about knowing Japanese words and phrases now? It's because these movies are subtitled in English, so I could learn Japanese while watching them. I mean, I know words like yamete and ai and igu and lots of others. Much better than just knowing konnichiwa, isn't it? I mean, I'm developing such an interest in octopron that I might just be a major in Japanese when I go to college. Who knows, I might be the one writing the subtitles in the future. Oh, and one last thing, you should know that octopron's considered pretty mainstream in Japan now. And it's also quite common in the Western world now too. Everyone's watching it. I mean, if I don't watch it, I'll be seen as some sort of freak at school. You don't want your son to be some kind of pariah because he doesn't watch octopron now, do you? I was actually 20 when this happened, but it's still a good story. Eating dinner at a restaurant with mum, aunt, uncle, grandmother, roommate, and a couple of family friends. I take out my phone to show my roommate, who sat beside me, a couple of funny selfies I took wearing his glasses. I'm swiping right to show him more photos, and then there's an eggplant pic. A big, veiny, red old eggplant pic. We both jump violently in surprise. I make a sort of squealing sound and we both blush. My mum is sat opposite us and gives us a funny look. She looks like she's about to ask, then decides against it. We eat dinner. When I was like 16 or 17, my parents found an exposed picture on my phone that I sent to my boyfriend at the time. They each separately came into my room to lecture me, /cry about me being a heathen, and then held up the picture of my bare butt the entire time. And then they came in together to pray over me because they thought Satan was trying to take over my body. Undressed photos of my then girlfriend. She thought I had them to blackmail her if I needed to and made a big story out of it, including talking to her father. They found out through my browser history that I was an active participant of a pro-anorexia forum, and they read all of my pathetic posts on there. I also had an accountability thread where I kept track of how much I starved myself, so they were really thrilled to find out about that. That wasn't a good time at all for me. Oofed. We all hope you're doing better now, story writer of that post. That disorder is no joke. Obligatory, not me but my sister, blah blah. Anyway, my sister is showing my grandparents something on her phone. She walks away for a moment to talk to me, then goes to take her phone back. The first thing that she notices is that the Google Assistant was scrolling through her gallery and was showing off the personal pictures she sent to her boyfriend. She's hoping it didn't show, but my grandparents are looking at her very strangely. Thankfully, she had underwear on in the pictures and they didn't include her face. We were able to write it off as being from our weird cousin, but it was still too close for comfort. Google Assistant was barred from gallery after that. What have mine found? Octopron I saved years ago as a curious preteen. What haven't they found? About 40,000 words worth of adult fiction that I've written. So this was funny. I must have been about 15 at the time. My half-sister, 3 years younger, was caught by her dad looking up adult flicks. To be fair to her, my mum decided to search both hers and my search history. Oh no, JPEG. I played it cool while my mum scrolled through months of my search history. I sat in my room watching YouTube or browsing the internet every day. Lots of adult flicks. Worst thing she finds is a Shane Dawson video titled, "She Licked My Ball, XD," or something like that. Oh my god, what is this? It's just a silly YouTube video, click on it, it's okay, I swear. She gets bored after a few minutes. Continues scrolling for a few more months worth of search history. Okay, son, glad to know I can trust you. And gives me a hug. I pleasured myself that night to some hardcore crap, praying my thanks to the incognito gods. I regret nothing. One time back in the day, my brother printed out an exposed girl photo from our family computer and printer. It was not HD to say the least. He apparently hid it in the household computer desk. Mum confronts us a while later about a picture from a web address called Dumpster Hussies. We never got in trouble of any sort, but think she was more worried about viruses. Also, I'm pretty sure one time my mum went to the printer and there was a backlog of orders yet to print, and they were also adult flicks of some sort. When I was much younger, middle school, my mother happened to grab my phone to look for something, and just my damn luck, I'd forgotten to close out of the hub. Especially unfortunate was the fact that when I was 18 and abused ads played as a banner, and my unsuspecting mother tapped that ad, that's what she thought I was watching. So now she thinks I'm into that very unpleasant side of adult flicks, and I had quite the talking to. Thank God she didn't scroll down and see what I was actually watching. Embarrassing to admit, but gay stepbrother fanfiction. Between Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly? Phineas and Ferb? I went through a period where I obsessively looked at adult flicks, about 12 years old. I actually wouldn't pleasure myself or anything, I just watched it because the concept of adult fun times was so new to me. The problem was, I would do it on my mum's computer because I didn't have it on my own. I would do it when she was out of the house walking our dog, but I never knew she was coming back until I heard the click of the front door lock opening. So I had about 4 seconds to close the browser and run to a different room and act like nothing was going on. Well, one day I was a few seconds too late and my mum poked her head into the office just as I was closing the tab. She immediately checked the history and found everything. Her solution was to remove the door from the office room so I couldn't have privacy in there. This was roughly 5 years ago when the entire family shared a computer, and a very crappy one at that. Overheated in an hour of cancerous Facebook game playing, and browser tabs constantly froze. One time I didn't get lucky enough for the tab to close in time for my dad to gain sight of the screen. The whole tab went blank, as that's what it tended to do when it froze, yet the title of the tab only read one word, which my father had to read, knowing full well it was an intentional search. Horse anatomy. My dad saw my interest in computers at an early age, so he bought me one. There wasn't any real pop-up blocker standard back then, so I stumbled upon videos of girls mud wrestling somehow. One thing led to another, and my dad ended up finding my search history. The next day, my dad took away the computer and gave me the talk. Imagine your small, frail librarian, my mother, sitting across from you reading out loud the names of those websites, www and .com included. She just put out her finger every time I tried to talk, fixed her glasses, and continued. My dad once found a not-safe-for-work conversation I was having with a male interest at the time. He read the entire thing back to me, aloud, told me I could be found guilty of being a hussy in a court of law, and showed his friends the entire conversation, including pictures, because it was appalling and disgusting and he needed advice. What can kill you easily that people often underestimate? Staircases. Friend of mine slipped, broke his neck, and died. He was 21. As a kid, I remember trying rollerblades down the stairs. One moment, I'm on the top of the stairs, and the next, I'm waking up at the bottom of the stairs with no memory of having fallen. Only some bruises, and I didn't tell my parents in fear of the slipper. Someone else in the vehicle not having their seatbelt on. If your 150-pound passenger isn't wearing a seatbelt, they turn into an unrestrained 150-pound sack of meat and bone during a collision or rollover. That can definitely mess you up if they smack into you. When I met my husband, he never wore his seatbelt. I'm an easygoing girl who doesn't tell him what to do. Except for that. I said that was a deal breaker. So he wears his seatbelt now. Jump ahead a few years. When my husband and I were test driving his car, I turned around and told the car dealer to put his seatbelt on. He laughed. My husband was like, she's serious. You better put it on. I don't know why this makes me smile. Maybe the look on the dude's face when I lectured him about being a torpedo. I said I could not care less what happens to him, but he will not be killing me or my husband. This is how I feel about all reckless driving. If you want to put your life in danger when you're behind the wheel, do it alone on an empty road. If people want to gamble with their own lives, then fine. That's their prerogative. But they're selfish Fs when they put each other's lives at risk. Water. Lakes, pools, etc. People forget how easily their children or themselves can get into trouble while around water. Floating down a lazy river with some beer and friends is, I think, one of the greatest experiences in this life. The most recent time I did this, I drank a lot, and then got separated from my group. At some point, I was kicking to get my floaty to shore, and it suddenly occurred to my inebriated self just how much danger I was in. If I slipped off my raft, I gave myself 50-50 odds of being coordinated enough to get out of the water. At best, and there was no one around to help me. I made it, obviously, but I still shudder when I remember that moment. Perhaps the closest I came to death, and I've been hospitalized on multiple occasions. Yep, I'm a pretty strong swimmer, but it's interesting how even 100 meters stretches out when you're not in the pool, or have circumstances like inebriation or rough conditions. A brief moment of distraction while driving. Just driving in general, you're moving at a high speed in a metal box relying on paint and lights to guide you, while also hoping literally every other driver does the same and doesn't make a mistake. From an emergency medical services point of view, showers, smack, and motorcycles. But the number one cause of injury, according to an overwhelming majority of patients, is not doing anything. Ladders. OSHA posts workplace fatality stats online. Literally every other entry is someone falling to their death from the top of a ladder. The ocean. I live in Australia, and the people from overseas just don't understand how dangerous the ocean can be. Tip for a visitor if you come to Australia, make sure you swim between the flags. That way the lifesavers can keep an eye on you and stop you from getting into trouble. Visited Australia in the summertime a few years back. We went diving on the Great Barrier Reef. Everyone had to wear a jelly suit, full body, one piece, thin wetsuit type of thing, because there are jellyfish so small you can't see and are so powerful they can kill you. Even if you were just swimming, not diving, you had to have this suit on. Back on the boat after our dive, some folks on the boat are swimming and start lowering their toddler into the water to swim. No jelly suit. The boat captain starts freaking and yelling at them to stop. None of them speak English. It was crazy. One of the other passengers ended up translating for them, but I think the fear of the ocean got lost in translation. They didn't seem concerned. The ocean and its inhabitants are no joke. Also, people who are not in good physical shape at all and cannot swim very well in calm waters, thinking they can handle swimming too far out into the ocean because it seems calm enough. I'm from the US and only have experienced East Coast beaches, so nothing compared to Australia. People still underestimate how powerful the ocean really can be everywhere. Tylenol, number one leading cause of acute liver failure in the US. ETA. Tylenol is acetaminophen, also called paracetamol. The limit is 4 grams per day. That's just 8 extra-strength Tylenol pills. Other drivers, especially the drunk ones. The amount of children who are now orphans because someone decided to drink and drive is very depressing. Blood clots can form in your legs due to inactivity and then travel to your lungs, which is fatal. Can confirm. Was a fairly active 24-year-old college student when I was on bed rest from multiple surgeries. Ended up getting a pulmonary embolism and being put on warfarin for over a year. Best part was when I went into a walk-in clinic complaining of pain of an 11 out of 10 in my chest, and the doctor said I had acid reflux and I had to beg him to x-ray me. Still think back about how easily I could have died if I didn't insist on more tests. If this video is making you feel a general sense of nervousness, dread, and stress at the frailty of life, don't worry, that is happening to the scriptwriter, narrator, and editor of this video as well. Cars. I babysit and nanny for 2 different families, and all of the kids have said their parents let them not wear their seatbelts. And I'm like, what the frick, you could die. You will wear your seatbelt in my car, and I won't move until you do. Alcohol withdrawals. They are some of the worst withdrawals you can put your body through, and in some cases it's worse than smack withdrawals. A lot of substances can just cold turkey off, but I'd recommend weaning off alcohol slowly just so you don't shock your body so hard. This more applies to hardcore alcoholics and not so much to your occasional drinkers. I never knew this until 6 months ago. My dad is an alcoholic. Mum calls me up saying that he's firing his gun in the garage. I race over and convince him after 2 hours to get in the car. Take him to the hospital, and upon release, doctor says if and when he decides to turn his life around, do not stop drinking cold turkey. It will kill him. Alcoholic here. I've gone through withdrawal numerous times, and even then I don't think I've approached delirium tremens more than 3 or 4 times. You know that feeling when you hold your breath for too long, and your body is just going, "Fricking breathe, we need it." That's what it feels like when you're withdrawing from alcohol, except it's all over your body and there's nothing you can do but ride it out. It tends to come on anywhere from 8 to 12 hours after your last drink, and peaks around 12 to 14 hours after. I've read if you can make it 24 hours, your chances of having a seizure at all fall dramatically. If you've timed it wrong, you withdraw at night. Forget sleep. You're going to toss, turn, sweat, and if you're really unfortunate, you'll nod off a little and borderline hallucinate. It's not something I'd recommend. I'd say nighttime is the wrong time for it because, at least in my experience, if you can do it during a busy day, then you at least have crap to do that can distract you. The scariest thing is going through all of this knowing this might be the one that kills you. It's no secret that alcohol withdrawals can kill, at least among alcoholics. You lie on your bed and sweat, wondering if you'll finally have the seizure that sends you to rehab. Take it easy on the booze, folks. It's literally poison. Automatic garage door opener springs. Do not try and fix or replace them on your own. They're deadly. I can vouch for this. Not the deadly aspect, but the more dangerous than you realize, especially while standing on a ladder aspect. Lesson learned. Garage doors are seriously heavy, and those springs make it seem feather light. There's a crap ton of potential energy in them, and unleashing all of it at once is violent. I've heard that they can embed themselves in walls. Garage door springs are very high on my things to absolutely never F with list, higher than angle grinders and snapping turtles. Being knocked unconscious for too long is super bad for you. It's a lot shorter period than you'd think to get deadly. Some historians theorize that this is what caused Henry VIII to become so unstable. His horse literally flipped on top of him and he stopped breathing for a bit, was unconscious for a few days afterwards. He was very intelligent and a great leader before it, and ended up becoming super paranoid and violent afterwards. Stairs, especially for the 60-plus people, but anyone at any age can fall down stairs. Then they're in debt because of the medical bill and sometimes paralyzed, or your neck gets crunched and you die. This happened a couple of months ago. My sister-in-law's family had a family friend visiting them out of state for a couple of days. They said he would make comments about how steep their stairs were and that someone could easily die falling down them. Well, one night they heard a loud crashing noise and they found the guy unresponsive at the bottom of the steps. Was pronounced dead at the scene when the paramedics arrived. I kinda half-assed making sure both ways were clear before I crossed the road the other day. Then I suddenly realized that even though I do it every day, so it's monotonous and seems like no big deal, not looking both ways is the difference between getting across the road safely and getting hit and killed by a car on the way back from buying a can of Pringles. The narrator can confirm that once in a state of exhausted delirium after an all-nighter finishing an essay, he was struck a glancing blow by a car when he didn't check both ways on the road. Easy, deadly mistake to make, folks. Easter flowers. They've been known to kill dogs and small children. Highly toxic. I had a dog that ate one and I had no idea they were poisonous. Few minutes down the road and he started projectile crapping and puking in a circle. I thought he was going to die. It only takes a few for a human to ingest and it'll kill you. Those stupid yellow flowers people plant everywhere. Tulips, narcissus, and I assume daffodils, or maybe that's the same thing, and calla lilies will kill your animals and also you. I think irises are also on the no-no list. I'm glad your dog was okay. Crowds. The closest I ever came to death was being about 10 feet from the stage at Lollapalooza 94 when the Beastie Boys came on. Parliament Funkadelic was on right before them, and everyone was just dancing, nobody was rushing the stage. The Beastie Boys banner dropped, and I turned around to several thousand people running at me at full speed. I got caught in the pit, and I'm a small person. I was immediately pushed away from my friends. The Beastie Boys were actually yelling at the crowd, telling them that the ladies had as much right to be up front as the guys, look out for friends, etc. People were grabbing my hair and my clothes to stay up, because almost everyone around me was a shirtless guy and pretty slippery with sweat. All the air was up around 6 feet off the ground, and I'm a whopping 5'3". Some very aware and awesome strangers noticed I was about to pass out and was only upright because I was being held up by the crush of people around me, and they passed me overhead to the security guys on stage. I easily could have died in that crowd. This is so true. I have a huge respect for folks who watch out for people around them in the crowd at live events. I was once knocked unconscious for a moment by an accidental elbow to the head from a dude next to me, and then came to my senses and realized someone was holding me by the armpits, not letting me fall. And I'm not exactly a small guy. If not for this stranger, I could have easily been trampled and injured seriously. So stay aware in the crowd, folks, for yourself and others. Deer. Stupid, paranoid murder machines with knives on their heads. Most animals will kill you for a reason, or to eat you, but not a deer. Fricking deer. Not only are they psychotic during mating season, but if you hit a buck in your car, the antlers can impale you if they come through your windshield. They are a lot bigger up close than most people realize. I've always found them kind of intimidating. A short fall. A friend fell from about 3 feet and landed on his head. You're still missed. Carrying a bunch of junk in your car. If you wreck, that crap will hurt and or kill you. A bag of canned dog food almost got me. Some diseases that are vaccinated for, such as measles and pertussis, whooping cough, are much more dangerous and carry a higher risk of deadly complications in infants and very young children than in older children and adults. This is one reason why the herd immunity avoided by widespread vaccination is so crucial. Infants cannot be vaccinated against such diseases, but their risk of contracting them can be greatly reduced by those around them being inoculated. Selfies in dangerous locations. I keep an eye on the Wikipedia list of death by selfie. In Nabarangpur, Odisha, India, a man tried to take a selfie with a wounded bear and was mauled to death. Good stuff. I live in an area with a lot of touristy spots near beaches, and some guy died because he was trying to get a selfie over a blowhole. Not next to, over, as in he stood on top of it hoping to somehow get a good pic of it blowing under him? Don't know the logic behind that, but yeah, he got blown off, obviously, into the water and got swept out to sea, all for the selfie. Somehow it feels okay to chuckle about people dying for the perfect selfie. Obviously it's a huge tragedy, but death resulting from trying to prove you're living in the moment feels oddly poignant. A single punch. It takes disturbingly little effort to kill a human. We are incredibly durable in most ways, but a solid punch to the throat or temple could easily kill on accident. Don't forget the chest. If you bop someone in the right place at the right time, off goes the heart. There was a youth lacrosse player a few years back that was working on his shot. One of his shots hit the crossbar and came back and hit him in the chest at the exact right time and killed him. There was also a minor league hockey player that died from a puck to the chest. The woods. People without much survival knowledge don't seem to realize that nature doesn't give an F about you. The weather, the wilds, the animals, all will kill you as soon as you mess up. I used to teach a wilderness survival course at a scout camp. Eagle Scout represent. A knowledge of how lethal mostly everything in the wilderness is sobering. Drink bad water, get the projectile craps and vomits, and die of dehydration. Eat bad food, or hell, just put food in your body that it's not used to, get the projectile craps, vomits, and die of dehydration. Get wet and stay wet, even in the middle of summer, probably develop hypothermia once the sun sets. Get an open wound, cut, or scrape, it's gonna get infected. Annoy a wild animal, get attacked. And it doesn't even have to be a big traditional predator like a wolf or bear. One kid at the scout camp had to be rushed to the hospital because he, and friends, cornered a raccoon and was annoying it. Another scout in a different troop got too close to a tom turkey and got mauled. So on and so forth. Yes, I love the woods and I spend quite a bit of time in them, but that means I have a healthy respect for what it can do, and I am prepared. Brain aneurysm. Can happen anytime. You can be the healthiest man in the world and take care of your body all the time and still die from one. And alligators. Eat my eggplant, jungle. Often, alligators paired with brain aneurysms, though the correlation has not been clearly established. Hippos. They may look like harmless, friendly giants, but if you get too close to them, they will absolutely mess you up. Giving birth. Just because we've been doing it for millions of years doesn't mean it won't kill you. Food. Plain and simple. Between unknown allergies, choking, foodborne illnesses, overeating, and a plethora of other possibilities, food is the silent killer that no one expected. Cows. Cows? Cows. They kill more people than sharks. How does a cow kill a shark? Thank you, commenters. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for that little exchange in this dark topic. This is dark, but depression. A lot of people think it's not as bad as it is, and it can get pretty bad. Not depressed anymore, but it was pretty bad, and your brain being so chemically ill, it will tell you things that you would really wonder how you believed it when you're not struggling anymore. This is very true. There's nothing worse than feeling worthless, even when you're surrounded by people who say otherwise. There's nothing worse than losing all enthusiasm for your passions. There's nothing worse than wanting to sleep so you can avoid the waking world. I've lost friends and family to depression. I suffer from it myself, and it's the only problem I can't seem to solve. One of my favorite descriptions of what depression and suicidal tendencies is like is something along the lines of, depression is like being in an upper floor of a burning building. Each day the flames rise up another floor. Some days the firefighters are able to bring the flames down, and other days the flames jump 10 floors. Eventually it gets to the point where the pain of jumping out of your window is less than the pain and effort of continuing to fight the flames. My therapist quoted someone who I can't remember now, but it was something like the above. David Foster Wallace from the novel Infinite Jest. Swimming in lakes, because there's amoeba and bacteria that can kill you if you have any open wounds or if it gets in your mouth and eyes. Brain-eating amoeba or Naegleria fowleri. It's found in drinking water too. Not living in an area where they're common? I think the greatest danger to me would be the mother fricker who's leaving scorpions in my shower. Fricking everything. Yourself. Between the ages of 10 and 34, taking one's own life is the second most common cause of death, second only to unintentional injury. On average in the US, there are 121 such incidents per day, and the rates in LGBTQ communities are 3 times higher than the national average. Be kind to yourself, people. Emus and cassowaries. Something emu war. Darn, foiled again. I mean, they're giant velociraptors. Who can blame them? Running in front of a train. Seriously, I see people do this a few times a month on my way back to work. If the arm is down, don't run, especially when there's more than 2 tracks. Nobody bothers to look down the freight train tracks. In South Florida, we just got a new passenger train running at 79 miles per hour, on tracks that formerly only had nighttime freight trains at 55 miles per hour. Current score is 7-0, with the passenger train winning against idiot pedestrians. Horses and horseback riding. Even decades-long experienced riders die from injury and accidents. It's not just the ones new to horses and the sport. A coach I had lost her husband in a barrel racing competition from injuries after a bad fall. I myself have fallen off and was stomped on by accident when the horse got upset in a storm. My spleen almost ruptured and I was off work for 3 weeks. They're large 1,200-pound squirrels that can and will spook at the most unexpected crap because it's hardwired into their instincts as prey animals. People don't understand that horses communicate with a lot of subtle physical clues that will let you know a few minutes in advance before it acts out of fear and or self-defense of itself or its herdmates and offspring. I'm constantly watching ears, eyes, hoofs, and leg positions, tail activity, facial expressions, and body posture when I'm grooming one of the horses. Both for changes in mood and because I know I'm doing my job right when grooming if the horse is truly relaxed and happy around me. Working with the horses I do and riding has been one of the best things that's ever happened to me. I love the animals I work with and care for, but I do not drop my guard when it comes to safety. Not only for myself, but also for the other barn girls and the horses. I would be devastated if someone suffered from something careless that I did. In conclusion, leave unfamiliar horses alone and never work around them without safety for yourself and the animals in mind. What's something harmless your parents did to you as a kid that really screwed you up as an adult? My dad was a huge yeller. Any little thing that went wrong was a full-on expletive-filled barrage. It never scared me or anything because he wasn't violent. However, in my adult life, my wife and I will argue and she'll tell me to stop yelling. I don't have the same yelling scale as other people, it seems, so I think I'm holding back and she thinks I'm yelling. It's very difficult to judge internally, but I'm working on it. My dad's yelling made me terrified of people raising their voices. Same. I full-on panic if I hear that particular tone in someone's voice, even if it's not directed at me. Fortunately, I'm not a yeller myself though. It's actually really sad. I think his father was far worse, so it's just how he communicates, and I'm not sure he's aware how hurtful it is to others.
I'm not yelling!
My father yelling. Making it a rule that I could hang out with friends once a week until I graduated high school. I started losing friends very, very quickly. People just wouldn't invite me places because I could never go. The nights I could go out, I had to be back by 8. In high school, before high school it was earlier. So I really didn't have anyone. Nobody wanted to hang out from 5 to 8 on a Friday night. They wanted midnight or so. I completely lack the confidence to make friends now. I haven't had a friend over in years. I'm 28 and my birthday is coming up. When I turn 30, I can't have a party. I'd have nobody to invite. I had a boyfriend throw me a surprise party for my 24th. His friends showed up and my family showed up. It was uncomfortable seeing like 10 people at a bar be my party when none of them were my friends. My brother ended up inviting his friends to add more people. My dad has an issue of making fun of people's appearances and then quickly saying, "I'm just kidding," followed by compliments. I've realized over the years that this has really messed with my self-esteem. It made me really self-conscious, and I never really think I look good. I think in the father's defense, there can be an art to doing this with, and I can't stress this enough, with the right people. Don't do it to your kids all the time. My mum used to joke a lot about my looks. If I stayed in the car for something, she would say, "Show me your ugly face. Good. Now no one will want to kidnap you," etc. Everything she said was, "Because it's funny, you know I don't mean it. You love me because I'm like this." But all it's done is leave me with a mean sense of humor to train myself out of, and constant negativity about myself. I had kinda the opposite experience. My mum would tell me little tips on improving my acne without provocation, then try to tell me I looked just fine. Mixed signals about whether or not I looked fine or not has left me unable to see myself as attractive in any way. After hitting puberty fairly early, anytime my parents saw me in a bathing suit or a tank top and shorts or anything remotely form-fitting, they'd start making jokes about how I was getting fat and needed to watch out if I wanted to stay pretty. I doubt they'd even remember doing it, it was so offhand, but it stuck with me. I was never even remotely close to overweight. I was developing curves, like women do at that age, so by high school I had an eating disorder. I'm at my heaviest now, in recovery, and my BMI has never been above 22. But there's a voice in the back of my mind that I have to fight all the time that tells me actually, I'm on the brink of obesity and I won't be pretty anymore if I eat the second piece of pizza or if I skip out on my 7th day in a row at the gym. My parents did the exact same thing. Offhand little comments, I'm sure they never paid 2 seconds thought. That impacts me to this day. My mother was horrified when I repeated a comment she made to me as a teenager about me eating so much that I'd be as big as a house. Thought there was no way in God's earth she'd ever say that. And I'm like, okay, then why do I remember it 10 years later? And also, why do I have an eating disorder? It almost makes it more hurtful when it's offhand or unintentional. Then you second guess and wonder if they're making jokes to gently tell you their real feelings. Same as you, I've never realistically been overweight, but I have no ability to look at my body and see what's really there. But I'm starting to get better, and I'm glad to hear that someone else is too. Using fast food and candy as an incentive for everything. I was morbidly obese by 11, and high school is rough when you're heavy. It took most of high school to reach a normal weight, and I still count calories and watch my diet carefully to sustain it. There's ample evidence which shows childhood obesity has dramatic effects on adulthood health, even if you manage to lose the weight. I'm glad you lost some weight and are taking steps to maintain a healthy lifestyle. Thanks, it's been more effort to maintain over the past 10 years than it was losing the weight. About 95% of people who go on diets gain it all back or end up at a higher weight. The best way to avoid the trap is to avoid needing to lose weight at all, which comes back to parents helping their kids with healthy eating and exercise. My dad has a temper and yells angrily about everything. Not really at us, but if some little thing doesn't go perfectly the way he wanted, he will just start screaming about it. This has happened so often and still does, and it contributes largely to the severe anxiety disorder I have now. My dad would do this too. It would almost always cause me to start crying, and then he would start yelling at me for crying for no reason. It would get to the point where he would yell if he even thought I was starting to cry, even if I wasn't, and all that has left me with some bad anxiety too. My mum claims that he yells because he's partially deaf and doesn't know how loud he is, but I don't know if I believe that. I get this. I have sound-induced anxiety too because my mum's husband/sperm donor never spoke to me, only yelled at me. Even a car backfiring gives me a mini panic attack.
I will mention that this seems to be one of the more common contributors to adult anxiety that has come up in this thread. Parents, save it for the occasions where it's really needed, if at all. My grandmother would never let me leave the house. Now I'm extremely antisocial. It's actually incredible with all the other stories I'm reading that are talking about parents who seem almost bat-crap insane. I'm hearing people who are 14 that were trapped in their houses because their parents were control freaks. I mean, when I was in elementary, I got bullied for never being cool and never being seen outside. I lived in a pretty bad neighborhood, but it wasn't a problem. You guys need to throw your whole parents away. They denied ever sending me and my sister to a day camp at which I was harassed by an adult. Being told that my emotions were wrong/not right. For all the good grades I had, I'm emotionally immature. Yeah, I was straight out not allowed to be angry. It wasn't a written rule, but that's how it worked. No matter the problem at hand, or even if it was a completely reasonable thing to be upset about, putting on an angry face, raising my voice, or changing my voice tone would result in my mother getting very aggressive. And suddenly the actual problem was forgotten, and it was all about the attitude. The only way to actually solve some problems was to repress anger as much as possible. But then she wouldn't take the problems seriously because obviously I wasn't upset over them. But saying something like, "This makes me very angry," even with a fully calm voice, would just get her angry because nothing was ever a reason for me to be angry apparently. But not for her. She could show her anger as much as she wanted. Then she doesn't understand why I don't like to share my problems with her. I guess she's like that because Grandpa used to be one of those angry guys who started shouting very loud at the tiniest issue. I didn't get to know him, but everything she's told me about him went in the same direction. So I guess she's just scared of aggression, and that's why she reacts so strongly to it. Grandpa likely wasn't allowed emotions as a kid. It was also times of war, which likely messed with him too. Sometimes people can be hard to understand, but there's always a reason. Cleaning. My mother always freaked out and screamed anytime something looked messy. The whole cleaning process, picking up items, laundry, dusting, vacuuming, was always a huge ordeal and never good enough for her. I hate cleaning, and I try really hard to keep my apartment neat, but I always associate cleaning with screaming. My husband is more messy than I am, and I sometimes can feel myself getting overly agitated with him, and I try so hard not to scream at him over a pile of laundry. I relate to this so darn much. My mother has insane and arbitrary standards for tidiness, and if I don't do something right or don't do it exactly right at the right time, it's yelling time. Getting teased about being a girl just trying to be friends with everyone, including boys. Every single one of them was, "my boyfriend," or "I must have a crush" or something. It can't just be me wanting to have friends. To this day, I really can't get close enough to guys to have a serious relationship. That, and I have a neglectful father, and every time I consider it, I'm petrified of bringing home an actual boyfriend to meet the family because I don't want to be teased anymore. It made me just feel so uncomfortable about who I can, should, or want to be friends with because I'm paranoid my family is mocking me behind my back. It didn't even need to be a friend. Just any story about anything that had occurred at school that happened to have a girl involved. "Oh, who is X? Is she your girlfriend?" Nowadays it's, "How come you never tell us anything about your personal life?" I grew up with Indian parents in America. "Who are those girls you're talking to? Why are you talking to them?" Every girl I talk to they look upon with suspicion to the point where they took me out of school and did homeschool to avoid friends? Seriously, my parents ruined my social skills forever. All I wanted my whole life was to fit in, to be a normal kid. Now they get angry that I don't share stuff with them. I always log out of my social media so they don't view it, and they complain that I'm neglecting my family because I hang out with my friends. I just know I'm going to raise my kids better, differently. I will never trust my parents. As someone whose parents quietly despaired of him ever bringing home any sort of partner until it actually happened, I guess I got the better end of that balance. When I was potty training, my potty was in the middle of the room. I have vague memories of my mum's friends watching me poop and laughing at my poop when I stood up. These memories are confirmed by my mum after I asked her. I'm 100% sure that's the reason I can't poop in public, or even at home if anyone can hear me. If you were anything like my nephew, you may have demanded an audience in the first place. He drags his potty out from the bathroom to the living room and wherever the most spectators are. I can't fault his competence. "Gaze upon my works, ye mighty, and despair." My mum, jokingly, she says it was a joke nowadays, asked if I was pregnant every time my time of the month was late. I would spank my lower stomach for hours on end because I thought I was pregnant from sitting on the toilet. I was 12, and I didn't do the deed with anyone until I was 19. Anytime I would cry or express anger, I would be teased for being upset.
she's mad. Oh, wah. Oh, boo-hoo. I ended up shutting down and finding unhealthy ways to cope that eventually plagued my life in more ways than one. They always shrugged off my accomplishments of course you got straight A's, you're so smart, or congrats on this huge accomplishment, but I mean, we're not surprised. What they thought they were doing was complimenting me, and they were doing that. I never saw it was anything else until I grew up and realized I won't try at anything I'm not immediately good at, and feel inferior to anyone who's better than me at something. While they were complimenting my intelligence, they should have been complimenting my work ethic. Now, I struggle with a fixed mindset and feel like a big bucket of wasted potential because I'm so terrified of failure. It's not their fault, they didn't do anything wrong, and we didn't know about the importance of grit and growth mindset back then. Ironically, a lot of smart kids get screwed over by a whole fixed mindset thing, even though they were complimented by it at the time. My parents do the same thing. Them giving me this expectation isn't helpful to my worrisome mind. I'm constantly expected to get better grades than my sister, even though she cheated on a lot of her work. I can account for my fear when my American history teacher told me that I got an 85% on my test. I ran to the bathroom and cried for about 30 minutes. Knowing my parents would be angry, I felt as if I was in a corner with nothing I could do. When she passed the grades out during class, the next day, I got a 95. I was really confused. I asked her about it, and she claimed she never said that I got an 85 on it. I looked through, and I really had a 95. I must have misheard or something, but it ended up seriously damaging my psyche. I seriously wish that I didn't have these expectations at all. I hope that nobody else ever has these, too. Watching my brother get praised for bringing it up to C's and rewarded with a dirt bike, while I sit waiting in the next chair to get reamed for slacking off and failing and then getting punished or grounded because there was one B on my report card. Then again, my dad's biggest parenting achievement was apparently, "At least I didn't get drunk and beat you all the time." Yay, thanks Yondu. I was raised in a church where virginity until marriage was sacred. I'd been a victim of the unspeakable act and repeatedly harassed as a child. The messages tumbling around in my mind growing up involved a lot of shame and being inherently unworthy of love. I'm finally in therapy for the abuse and more, and undoing the lies I learned so very well. Mum smoked 3 packs per day but didn't want us kids to be around the smoke all the time, so she set up her personal space, i.e. a chair where she reads books anytime she isn't working. Away from us, and we missed out on a whole lot of affection or interaction because of her habit. It took a lot of time and healing to have a healthy relationship with a woman. Happily married 8 years this coming October. Congrats on your marriage. Gosh, that's a mixed viewpoint. I mean, nice that she cared about caring for your health and well-being, but my god, interacting with your kids is so important. She could have taken down her per-day intake to exercise some care with her kids. My mum used to tell my sister and I that she was too claustrophobic to hug us. Didn't have that problem with our little siblings though. I guess the claustrophobia cleared up. My mum used to tell me stories about a big hairy spider that was gonna come bite me if I got out of bed at night. I still frickin' hate spiders. My mother got tickets for a small boat and canal tour in Amsterdam for the 2 of us. Somehow, as a little kid, I wanted to keep those tickets, 'cause why not? So instead of just giving them, she wanted me to practice mental calculation for a bit. So she gave me a few questions on the lines of, a ticket for an adult costs this much, one for a child, this much, how much should a family pay with X adults and X children? I got 2 or 3 right, the last one on the other hand, I couldn't get it right. She even asked me 3 or 4 times more for the last one, each time more aggravated than the last time. Last answer yet again wrong, and she got kind of too frustrated with me, and she tore the tickets up and the whole boat trip was probably awkward for me. Now, 10 plus years later, I realize I have a fear of failure. I'm scared to screw up the things I do, say, think, and even how I look. Even now, typing this brings me a bit into tears. Worst fear of failure is that I'm very quickly to think that I'll disappoint my parents and my current boyfriend, making me say sorry way too often as well. Moving around. By the time I'd finished elementary school, I'd been to 5 cities and 2 states. I became very good at making friendships and getting into relationships, but I had a very hard time keeping them. My parents were and are helicopter parents. Along with this, they didn't care enough to teach me valuable lessons or anything I'd actually need in life. It was all grades, 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 Allah, Allah, Allah. The result? I lacked many of the social skills people had, such as basic cooking, social skills, etc., and also had and still have social anxiety, especially with authority, even if I don't see them as a threat, which one time ultimately nearly made me take my own life. My parents wanted me to be happy, which sounds fine out of context, but no. I wasn't allowed to be anything but happy. You can bet I would have gotten a lecture for anything less than cheerful.
Comfort is antagonizing. Disappointment and annoyance feels shameful, and to this day, I don't fully trust anyone at all with my thoughts or feelings. My dad would often playfully hit me in the head with plastic bottles, rolled up newspapers, etc. He usually hit harder than he probably meant to, and then when I'd say ow, he'd tell me to toughen up, that couldn't have hurt, blah blah. Now years later, I still find myself flinching at the most random of things. Oof. There's a saying, all kids deserve parents, but not all parents deserve kids, and I've been thinking it the entire way through recording this. My parents would scream and fight over a lot of stupid things and then blame it on me and not my siblings. When they did that, they brushed it off, didn't think anything was wrong when I cried about it, and yelled at me for being dramatic. I'm a triplet and the middle child, so I always had to do stuff my siblings didn't. When I was around 10, my brother and I had a big fight, and I was forced into anger management therapy. But my brother wasn't, so it really messed with my head. They also talk to the other two a lot, and when I try to say something, they unconsciously ignore me, because they think I'll say something hurtful or stupid. My mum used to make fun of me for fulfilling manly stereotypes, such as only wanting to wear one pair of shoes, hated makeup and clothes, shopping, even as a teen, not being able to find something despite it being right in front of me, etc. I'm really insecure about my femininity now. So much to where if I do something annoying that's stereotypically feminine and someone calls me out on it, I'm secretly super flattered that they think I'm girly. I'm also bisexual, so being a woman who likes women sometimes makes me feel really masculine and uncomfortable, even though I know it's irrational. Just laughing at me for getting upset about something stupid and telling me how silly I was being. There's nothing wrong with that, but I was just a sensitive kid and took away from that showing your sad and upset emotions was bad, and that it should be avoided in company of others at all costs. It really messed me up in the long term, and I didn't get help because I couldn't talk about it to my parents, for the same fear of being laughed at. I can't blame them, and I really don't, because it's really something I see quite a lot of, and with 99% of kids, it's harmless. I, however, am still recovering from years of mental crap. Neglect. Neglect seems harmless. People are busy with their own lives, right? But that lack of love does terrible things to a child. Severe depression, self-esteem issues, trust issues, loneliness becomes normal. Numbness becomes a habit. I wish I were dead, but the medicine helps, a bit. As a child, my parents would send me to bed without dinner if I misbehaved. I'd be so hungry in the middle of the night and I'd scramble up to the pantry and sneak whatever I could, mostly snacks for school lunches. I'd sneak back, squirrel it down, and throw the wrappers away carefully. I was also raised as the good one or the people pleaser. I've struggled with secret eating, binging, portion control, and anxiety for as long as I can remember. Eating never made sense. Couple this with the people-pleasing, and I'm just a chubby, conflicted mess with a high tolerance for all kinds of narcissistic people. I'm a parent now, and it's all clear as day. I'm working on myself, and hopefully I can be better to my kids. Helicopter parenting. I was never out of my mum's sight. I know she's an abuse survivor of a bad home, and I know she really did mean well, but now I'm suspicious of everything and afraid to try new things. Both my parents would sometimes leave randomly without telling me. My mum would leave whenever she was angry at my dad, and I was so young that I thought she would never come back. My dad didn't like to talk about it, and it would sometimes be for extended periods of time. My dad would disappear to the bar and not come home until 1 or 2ish in the morning, where I lived with him. About 13 years old at the time. Neither one sees how this could have negatively impacted me. I still get very scared of people leaving me. They sent me to speech therapy when I was 12. Until then, I had no idea that I had a bit of a speech impediment, and while I was a bit shy, I never felt bad about the way that I spoke. Speech therapy would have been great if I'd wanted to be there. Instead, I was suddenly made to feel like I was terrible at talking, and almost as bad, being forced to fix the way I talked with a bunch of 3 to 5-year-old kids. I had my own teacher, but I still had to wait with all the smaller kids. I was so angry that I actively tried not to do anything that the speech therapist wanted me to do. By my parents' thinking, sending me to speech therapy was probably an investment for my future. Talking is one of the pillars of society, but 15 years later, I still occasionally feel extremely self-conscious about the way my voice sounds, and I dread talking with people that I don't know. I would never tell them this, of course. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.